19 hours. That's how much online video people are watching on average in a week. And the demand for video is only growing. If you're a content creator, you know the struggle of picking between quality and quantity to grow your channel, especially if you're on a tight budget. But who says you can't have both? With Storyblocks, you get all the stock content you need to create amazing videos fast. While most stock libraries have expensive pay-per-clip pricing, Storyblocks gives you unlimited downloads for one set price. Download anything from a library of millions of 4K and HD footage clips, After Effects templates, music, sound effects, images, and more. Everything is covered by our industry-leading licensing that lets you share your videos anywhere, anytime. Plans start at just $15 a month. Find all the stock you need and create faster than ever, so you can tell your story your way. Visit storyblocks.com/redcircle to learn more.
This morning in the Atlanta airport, no one's missing a meal on Mac Wilburn's watch. With 11 restaurants to serve passengers, he's got dining for every destination. And it all started when Mac talked with First Horizon Bank about opening a franchise in the airport. Now it's open for business and cleared for takeoff. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Mac. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Welcome to Spotcast, Season 3, Episode 22, Stardate 9603, Mark 64. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
And Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
I should try not to improvise during the introduction. Gets all stuttery and stuff. I'm going to say something about, the new year, and Happy New Year, by the way, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, fans.
Happy New Year. The 1st of January.
2021 came and we did not see the giant boss life bar in the sky, so that's a good sign.
Boss life bar? What?
Like a video game where you got to the level and you got to face the end boss.
Yeah. Apparently that's coming on January 21st, I think, right?
Right.
Anyway, we can get political on this show. We're not scared of politics on this show that much. Anyway, so this week we'll be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 12. There is a tide. Change to the good of the people. What?
Change from the good of the people. That's what they had it listed at until this week.
Yeah, see, last week we had a feeling they would change it. So there is a tide, ellipsis, or there is a tide, ... Is it ... or you just put that in there?
No, that's how they had it listed on the site now.
Alrighty, so there's a tide. So where does that? What's missing from the rest of that quotation? I wonder.
So I'm looking at the Wikipedia entry, and it claims that now episode 13 is going to be That Hope Is You Part 2, which makes a little bit more sense than what we saw early in the season of where's the Part 2? It's like all the rest of the titles do not include That Hope Is You Part 2. So they're playing some interesting games here with the titles.
So once again, Michael Burnham saves the day, right? Or saves the whole season, I guess. Right? Anyway, fact check. We have some fact checks. So Jonathan, you can lead us off in the fact check.
Yeah, so we had spoken last week. We were talking about a lot about The Mandalorian because it was the season finale of The Mandalorian Season 2. And Tim, you had mentioned, there's an awful lot of hubbub for Boba Fett, the character who only had 2 lines in the entire original trilogy. And something about that didn't quite sit right. So I went and looked it up, and he actually has 4 whole lines, and they're all in Empire Strikes Back. All he does in Return of the Jedi is yell. So I've added a link to the BobaFettFanClub.com where they've got a list of his 4 very exciting quotes.
Okay, cool. And I did watch this week on this weekend, I guess. They've had been replaying all of the Star Wars movies, including Solo and Rogue One, on our Showcase channel here. So I've watched the Return of the Jedi, and I watched the barge scene where Boba Fett that does fall into the Sarlacc pit. The Sarlacc burps. So I assume the Sarlacc had a little trouble passing his armor, right? So
yeah, it's funny because there's been a lot of different sort of visions of how that happened. We talked last week about the Tales of the Bounty Hunters novel, which for a lot of people was sort of the uncanonized version of what happened, where he was swallowed and then he was down there and then he found a way out, sort of Jonah and the whale style. There was an original, the first vision of how that happened was actually in the first Marvel comic version of Star Wars that came after Return of the Jedi, where Han Solo and Princess Leia go back and they go back to Tatooine, and apparently during the belch that you referred to, Tim, the belch projectiles him out. You just didn't see it.
Oh, yeah.
At the time.
George forgot to put that in the show, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so take from that what you will. I'm not sure that that's actually the case. Right. Obviously it hasn't been canonized.
Right.
But
so since we're talking about the Sarlacc, did you not find that the original Sarlacc that just had a hole going down with sort of spiky teeth on it,
yes,
sort of like an inverted octopus,
yes,
was much more menacing than the sort of
Venus flytrap looking thing? Yeah,
I was gonna say flytrap. It sort of had like a CGI sort of
it looked like the Venus flytrap from Little Shop of Horrors, the one with Rick Moranis.
Right. Yeah, well, I don't know, I think that's probably insulting the Little Shop of Horrors flytrap, but yeah, I just noticed because of course I've been watching, and of course every time I see the Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo in A New Hope, I cringe. But yeah, so because that scene just doesn't need to be there at all. But anyway, for many reasons. But and there's that dog again. Anyway, yeah. So just I don't know, just editorialize. I was saying to Carol today that George Lucas's wife won an Academy Award for editing on that first movie, so I don't understand why he felt he had to change it. Right? So,
yeah.
I guess he didn't win an Academy Award for re-editing it, did he?
No.
Okay. All right. Art for art's sake, money for money's sake. Yeah. So I'll just finish this one off. And we were talking last week about the what was that first movie called? The Phantom Menace. And there was some kid that won a pod race. I couldn't remember at the time what his name was, but his name was apparently Jake Lloyd. He was the unforgettable kid in the Phantom Menace.
The unforgettable kid?
Yeah, it's the unforgettable kid. Let's move on to our headlines.
We had a couple of interesting ones this week. So the first story is that one of the producers of the new Game of Thrones prequels has been poisoned to death in a very surprising and very odd story. I don't know if you guys have seen this one. So the man's name was Lin Shi. He was known as an executive with a Chinese game developer called Yozu, and he had worked on this Game of Thrones Winter is Coming strategy game, and they had brought him in to start working on help working on this prequel. And according to the story, he was poisoned by one of his colleagues, one of his Chinese colleagues. He was allegedly poisoned by aged tea, which is a fermented it's called Pu'er tea, and he was poisoned by his one of his colleagues. Now this, I guess, colleague has been arrested in Shanghai, and there's again, it's a really weird story. The Guardian has it, the BBC has it, but anyways, this person was sort of an up and comer. He's in his 30s and late 30s, and he was sort of very, very wealthy. He was worth almost $1 billion, and they're still not sure why this happened, but it sort of cast this sort of cloud over this new production that had been started. They were, I guess, in pre-production on this show, and they've been working on it, and everyone's sort of just shocked that this guy just, not only is he just died suddenly at a very young age, but that he was killed.
Poisoned.
Yeah.
By his colleagues.
That's by one of his colleagues. That's what it says. Yeah.
Wow.
The person in custody is allegedly Shu Yao, who was the head of Yozu's movie production arm. So I don't know. So I guess the other thing we should mention, we talked about this before, that they were doing an adaptation of Three Body Problem, which is this very, very beloved Chinese sci-fi book that is being adapted to a Netflix series. They have been working on that as well. well. Anyways, this guy was sort of considered, a star in China, and he was sort of breaking through in other markets with some of his other work. And but yeah, everyone is just sort of shocked and stunned that this has all happened, and it has cast this weird pallor. What do you guys think of this sort of weird scenario?
That is very strange.
Yeah, you don't see that sort of thing happen too often, right? It's not like, I mean, if it was a common thing, you would guess that like the D&D guys would have been poisoned as well, right? Angry people upset at stuff, and yet it doesn't happen. Like, I mean, it's just strange to see that.
Yeah, I didn't know what to make of this when I first heard it, because I guess initially he checked himself into hospital and just sort of said, no, I'm not feeling well. And then they just sort of said, well, they suspect that he may have accidentally had something. Oh, then he was poisoned, and then he died. And then they were like, oh, and one of his colleagues has been arrested, and it just sort of keeps snowballing into these weird things. It's such a weird story. So I mean, just sad and surprising. But what it means for the future of this Game of Thrones prequel, hopefully it will not, ruin the hard work that everyone's put into this. But obviously, it's definitely, it's got to be a shock for everyone working on this project.
Weird.
And unfortunately, I've had another bit of bad news too. So this, I saw the story last night. So one of the voice actors from Clone Wars, as a matter of fact, the voice actor who did the voice of Yoda on the Clone Wars, has suffered a stroke, and his name is Tom Kane, and he's worked on all kinds of different. He's a well-known voice actor. He's worked on all kinds of projects, including Archer and of course Clone Wars. He worked on Powerpuff Girls, Robot Chicken, Kim Possible, all kinds of different stuff. He suffered a stroke, and he is now unable to speak. He's the part of his brain that's been deactivated by the stroke has eliminated his ability to communicate verbally, and he can't read and he can't spell. So this is a really sad story, that this is somebody who, whether you knew it or not, was, behind a lot of different things that we've enjoyed over the years. So I just wanted to call this one out and say, gosh, I hope Tom can recover from this, because he has provided us with so much entertainment over the years, and it was just such a sad story. It's up on his Facebook page. You can look him up. His daughter is sort of keeping people abreast of what's happening with him, and he's now doing his speech therapy and physical therapy, trying to recover, and just wanted to shout him out and say we really hope that he can recover, because he has been such a huge part of some of the stuff that we love.
Wow. Yeah, it's sad when it's like his main meal ticket, as it were, too, right?
Yeah. And again, it's not like he was sort of a bit part player. I mean, the voice of Yoda on the Clone Wars, he did that for a long time. The trailer dropped this week for Superman and Lois, the new Superman CW Arrowverse series. Gives us our first look at the series led by Tyler Hoechlin as Superman, who's of course been Superman in the CW series for a few years now. And it kind of has a little bit of the Lois and Clark vibes. It's kind of got that sort of mix of love and sort of domestic bliss with superheroics and stuff like that. It looks interesting. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that one yet, but
no. But is this supposed to take on Wanda and Vision, or what?
No, I mean, I think it's looking much more sort of mainstreamy, kind of, a little less Legion, a little more Lois and Clark.
Yeah. So I only watched like the first 3 seasons, I think, of the Supergirl show, and I always found when he was on, he was very stiff. I didn't find him very Superman. He wasn't it wasn't much of a Superman to me. Like, I was disappointed by the depiction, because he was always sort of this mystery sort of guy off in the other city, right?
Yeah, and they sort of built him up a little bit. I actually found him quite charming. I thought like I said, in the first 3 seasons, he didn't have much. He just kind of stood around, and they did flesh him out a little bit more as it's gone on. And I did find that he does have a sort of lightness to him, which a lot of the other actors haven't necessarily brought in more recent incarnations. To me, he felt a little bit more like Christopher Reeve's sort of twinkle in his eye kind of version of the character, which I kind of liked. Jaime, I know you've been watching Supergirl. What's your take on Tyler in this new adaptation?
Yeah, Tim, I think where you might have stopped, and I could be wrong, I think in the 4th and 5th seasons they do incorporate him more, and I think early seasons he was like, he's off planet because having 2 superpowered people would solve this problem, right? So he's off planet and he's doing stuff, right? He's busy, and then they snuck him in for a few episodes, and he's kind of more of a cameo, but he becomes much more involved in one of the more recent seasons. So maybe that's where some of the difference comes there, because I actually am pretty excited to see what ends up happening here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, George Reeve always sort of had a sort of charm, like sort of sense of humor to his portrayal of Superman, and Clark Kent, right? Clark Kent was always like Christopher Reeve's version of Clark Kent was a real, like almost like Crispin Glover kind of portrayal, right? In Back to the Future. But I always liked the George Reeve Superman. That was my first exposure to Superman in the flesh, as it were, right?
Yeah. And again, it's a different era too. So,
I am old, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think the series is going to be worth a watch. I'll definitely give it a few episodes at the minimum to see if it wins me over. Yeah.
Coming Tuesday, February 23rd on the CW. Do you guys have that over there, or do they put it on Crave or something? I forget where Supergirl and the Arrowverse comes out on your own.
Yeah, here in Canada, those shows are on Showcase, which
used to be on City or Space or something.
They were. So the CW shows are kind of spread to the winds here. It's sort of whoever paid the most, and they're not connected, which is a problem. So a few of them are direct to Netflix, but they're delayed by a couple of days, which is really, and we talked about that in the past, really, really annoying. And then the other ones are on a mix of Showcase and Space. So where this one has ended up, I have not seen where it's going to be here. You can get CW directly here if you have a premium package, but it is on like the highest tier cable packages. So if you have one of those, well, then aren't you lucky to have all that extra money to spend every month? But here, unfortunately, CW is a little niche.
Mm-hmm. Now, can I talk about the space station?
Absolutely. Now we can talk about the
I saw a quick headline the other day saying something about an astronaut had smuggled a dead body up into space. I didn't hear the space station, but
to be fair, not a dead body so much. It's ashes. So this one caught my eye because we are a Trek podcast and we do talk about these things. So the story had been revealed by the UK Times that the ashes of James Doohan, a Canadian actor who played Scotty on the original Star Trek, had been smuggled aboard the International Space Station. And this is not something that happened last night or last week. They've been up there since 2008.
But I knew he'd been up there. I knew he was going to go into space. That was his sort of dying wish, right?
Yeah, and I had thought I had heard that years back that he wanted them to be, I thought they were going to sort of, either release them into space or put them in a projectile and just sort of
or satellite or something. Yeah,
I thought that was sort of the thing. But I guess this story by the Times has revealed that they had snuck them up there years and years and years ago, and that they have
Tim Hortons coffee can, obviously, right?
Yeah, and that they have been up there all this time. So every person who's up there knows where they are and seen them and everything. So we have the link here, but it's an interesting story. It sort of outlines how they did this on the QT and got this to fulfill his final wishes to have these things brought up to the space station. But really interesting that this has sort of all happened surreptitiously. Of course, James Doohan passed away in 2005, and apparently a few years later they squirreled him away into space, and the story points out, this is the part that I really, really thought was great. His ashes have now traveled 1.7 billion miles through space, orbiting the planet more than 70,000 times. I love that. That's awesome. Good for him. So yeah, neat story that this guy. And actually, I had a chance to interview James Doohan in 2000.
Wow.
He was getting on. His mind wasn't quite as sharp. We had to sort of take some time going through some stuff. But a lovely person. Very, very happy to speak with me for a story I was doing. And just like all those great figures of science fiction that I've had a chance to talk to over the years, such a thrill to get a chance to even just be on the phone with him for half an hour and get a chance to talk to him. So cool. Very, very, very happy for him that he got his final wish.
So I saw a video the other day too. Apparently one of the astronauts, I don't know if this was a staged video or not, but one of the astronauts smuggled an entire gorilla suit onto the space station.
Because you do, of course.
And then started chasing around one of the other astronauts, which is like the part about the chasing the other guy looked a little staged, but can you just imagine?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, wasn't it the original astronauts the ones that did the Apollo mission smuggled the golf clubs up so that they could take a few swings on the moon?
Anyway, so this is a story actually from Carol. She was reading this to me the other day from the Toronto Star, and of course, I can't have a link to the Toronto Star on our podcast, so I've gotten one from the Calgary, Alberta, something or other.
St. Albert
today. Yeah. So I don't know if and we've talked about this kind of subject in the past, but apparently the headline is that Canadian broadcasters grappled with how to address inappropriate content in classic TV. And so there's like, a lot of, we've talked about this before, like, the old classic Looney Tunes and how, some of them are no longer appropriate to be broadcast to children. Although we were raised on them. Nothing wrong with us, John? And
we turned out fine.
Yeah. And then, Disney, I think we may have talked about Disney putting a disclaimer in front of Dumbo and Peter Pan about how, Black and Native American characters are portrayed and addressed in those shows, right? And so Canadian broadcasters are policewomen. Apparently, there's lots of racial prejudice and outdated cultural depictions. Notwithstanding a woman being a police person, which was unheard of back in the day. But yeah, there's a whole article here on the various challenges that broadcasters have today showing this stuff. To do that. Even the National Film Board, we have some really classic, short films here, Jaime, put up by the NFB, National Film Board. And yeah, some of them are they've had to rewrite the descriptions and talk about the different ways that people are addressed in these inappropriate ways. And we're very conscious of this now that we have a couple of characters on the current show of Discovery that have different kind of depictions, right? So yeah, so an interesting problem that we're facing with, right?
And I think it's going to be something that we're going to continue to do over the course of time. Times change. There just is never, and to be fair, that's not true. We've struggled with this in other forms over the course of human history. We've struggled with, obviously, books and, different ways that things are depicted that way. It's just now becoming harder and harder to reconcile some of these things. And it's an unfortunate thing that some of these things are not that old that we're now having to circle back to and say, that's not okay. Part of it is obviously that, people are getting more woke, but part of it is also just, I think we're just all coming to an acceptance that, a lot of these preconceived ways of depicting people, even as recently as, 10 years ago, are not going to fly. And how do you do that? You put in a warning label at the beginning? Do you edit the scenes out? Do you alter the dialogue? Like, how do you deal with that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, my position has always sort of been it's an art form, and as such it should be, yes, put disclaimers and explain away all you want, but when I read Huckleberry Finn, I expect to be surprised to see the N-word in there, right?
Yep.
But then, or not surprised, right?
You are a person of color, but you are not person with African heritage, so it hits you differently.
Yes, of course it does. Yeah.
I wonder, how people feel. Like, we should ask some of our family, but maybe, it's personal views on these things. But I get offended.
Prejudice in my upbringing. I mean, like I'm
sure, and as ridiculous as it sounds, so have I, based on my cultural heritage as well.
Yeah.
Growing up German in the 1970s was not the easiest thing in the world, where everyone would punch me and say things like, my granddad fought in the war. Like, it's just, far less than you would experience, I'm sure, in other places for other conditions. But everybody's got a thing that people will poke at, unless you happen to be just, the perfect color of person at the perfect place in the perfect time.
There isn't one.
Which there isn't,
so,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when I hear people on television casually dropping references to Nazis or squareheads or all the sort of stereotypes and demeaning insults to German people, I don't make a big deal out of it, just because it isn't directed at me, and I don't take a personal offense to it. But I also do get a little bit of I feel bad for my kids. I feel like there is that sort of presence, and I'm not saying it's unwarranted. Obviously, Germany was responsible for some pretty heinous things in the 20th century, but how long does that legacy last into the generations for, my kids and whatever else? Like, I don't like to think that someone's going to judge them or treat them differently because of their heritage, just like I wouldn't want people doing that if I was, Black or Indian or Hispanic or whatever. I wonder how far that trend goes, I wonder at what point you just end up, for lack of a better term, whitewashing all of those things.
This is the thing, I kind of, just on this subject, I kind of object to the idea of tearing down statues of men in history who, because of their private life behavior, right? Like tearing down like getting rid of a statue of McDonald basically it sort of negates the negative impact he had on people, because now there's no longer a talking point, right? Now we're walking around in this perfect world where there are no symbols of bad times, right? Like I remember, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but when I remember going to New York in like 1967, 68 with my family and seeing African American kids hanging on the back of the bus because there was no seats for them, or even being in the bus and like realizing that the whites sat at the front and African Americans had to sit at the back of the bus, and there was like a line in the middle of the bus, and getting on with my obviously dark father with my family and saying, where do we sit? Right. Anyway, it's a tough thing. I mean, admittedly, I don't know, Carol was telling me she was watching a TV show the other day, TV channel the other day, with no matter what the show was, they say at the beginning of the show, this may cause offense to somebody and may have depictions of violence and whatever, and bad language. And it's like, the show that's on afterwards is completely innocuous. Like, it has nothing in it that requires a disclaimer, but this station feels obliged to just put this in front of every show, right? Yeah. It ends up having a numbing effect after a while, I think.
Well, I think you nailed it. Where is that line, right? Like, if you say it every time, then people are just like, well, whatever, but then they may be triggered by things. Again, if there was an explicit term to offend me and it was sprung upon me during a show, I would be offended. How do you do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
What about you, Jaime? What do you make of all this?
It's definitely tough to balance that line. I think you're right. You don't want, I don't know if you guys have encountered this if you visited the state of California, but everything may or may not cause cancer in California. Right. So everything has a label on it.
Yeah, research causes cancer in rats. Yeah.
Yeah. Like all sorts of things. Be like, well, what? This? Okay, great. I mean, people see it so much now that there's not really like a good indicator of, oh, this is something that could legitimately mess you up, right? And so I think the better answer is to just be more careful about this sort of thing. Maybe some things like Song of the South or Dumbo does make sense. Like I kind of envisioning like Key and Peele. Do you remember when they had the like Obama anger translator? I mean, like them to come in and be like, hey, guess what? There's some racist stuff in this, or oh, guess what? There's some sexist stuff in here. And that would be a little bit more lighthearted and also sort of prepare people for it, that you don't just ignore it, right? It's like the modern things that you see on airplanes where, well, I guess pre-pandemic, where you would see, oh, here's this funny video, instead of the like, okay, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's paying attention as the flight attendants are miming this stuff out. It's like, oh, let's watch this video of like, oh, is that Samuel L. Jackson telling me to put on my seatbelt? Okay, cool. I'll pay attention. Right.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember, it's been a whole day since I saw the Star Trek episode we're going to talk about later, but I think they address a few things and they kind of celebrate a few different things in this show, which is kind of an interesting perspective on things, right? In terms of how things work, especially when you compare this against the original series, which had no qualms about, race and gender and things like that, right? So
yeah.
Anyway, moving on. I know we're going to talk about Wonder Woman later on, but I just wanted to take a minute. Like, we on our other show, we do a thing called Follow Up, where we pick up stories that relate to things we talked about in the past. It's kind of like our fact check. But so I've got a story here about, or just a link here about about Wonder Woman streaming in Canada on. It says Amazon Prime. Yes, Amazon Prime Video, Crave, Disney Plus, Netflix, and PVOD, which is a new term I was was not aware of. And PVOD in my case, I watched it on iTunes as a rental for $39, $29. So I wondered what PVOD stood for, and I immediately Googled it, and I came up with pulmonary veno-oscular disease. And then when I dug a little bit deeper, it turns out to be called Premium Video on Demand. And I noticed on the Cineplex app today, there's a few movies coming out. Witches is a movie that's being released this weekend, as well as Wonder Woman in this PVOD, or premium video, premium or home. What do they call it on the app? Home home release or something. Home premiere. Yeah, home premiere is the term they use for it on the app or on the email I got today from those folks. And just it's interesting. I did watch the movie last couple of days, and we watched it again before my rental expired. And I just wanted to. I was looking through IMDb as I normally do when I'm watching a movie, especially for the second time. And apparently, okay, let me ask this question to you guys: how many release dates do you think Wonder Woman had?
I'm gonna say 3.
Let's see. So they would have had the original date. They probably would have moved it back like a month or two, and then moved it back. Yeah, I would guess 3 as well.
The film has had 7 release dates. The first,
wow.
The first being December 20th, 2019. It was moved up to November 8th, 2019, in order to avoid competing with Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, in 2019. And once again, it was announced that the 25th James Bond film would leave its originally scheduled slot for November 1st, and Warner Brothers moved the film up another week to take extra advantage. Anyway, so it became, and then it was decided the 4th was when it was pushed back 7 months to June 5th, 2020, which we all know and love, as Warner Brothers realized the success of the first film's June 2nd, 2017 date was comparable. The 5th change was made March 24th, 2020, when it was moved to August 14th, 2020, due to concerns over COVID-19. And again, it was moved to October 2nd in June, when Warner Brothers shifted to schedule for other upcoming films. And then September 2020, and once again, it was pushed to December 25th, 2020. And it saw somewhere else in here that it was around Christmas time, but the movie takes place on the 4th of July, most of the story. But there is a part of it that's around Christmas time. But yeah, it's just 7 release dates. Yeah, who knew? Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
I think that is the fine tradition of 2020. Everything got bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped until it was bumped off.
Right. And then this next story is near and dear to our heart, and it's that Tig Notaro is returning as Reno for Star Trek Discovery Season 4, but she's limiting her inclusion because of concerns over COVID-19. It is filming in Toronto starting, I was just reading the article here. It started in November.
Right? I was going to say about a month ago.
We're in lockdown now, so everything's on hold. I mean, one of our family members works in the TV trade as a lighting guy, and he was telling us the other day that everything. They were working with masks and procedures, and he was getting tested every day and all that kind of stuff. And but yeah, because he was working on a couple of shows. The one we all love and love that he works on is wrapped up, but which is good news, I guess. And so they're Cronenberg is coming back, Blue Del Barrio is coming back, Ian Alexander's coming back, but yeah, Tig Notaro is stepping back a little bit, in her role as the, what do they call it here, the acerbic engineer, Jet Reno.
Yeah, I guess I'm not too surprised in that she hasn't been in every episode anyways.
Right.
Like to me, she always seemed like a strategic strike, right? You don't need to, you don't want to use that weapon every time. You want to sort of break it out when you need it. And she sort of would just sort of pop in, say some smart ass things for an episode, and then you wouldn't see her for another couple episodes. She's always felt like a guest star to me.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like Bob Newhart in the Jedi costumes in Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, that's right. Come in, do something funny, leave.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Jaime, you were up next, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this one is gonna work better for those of you transporting at home to check the show notes. I got the link link. This is the YouTube channel Built IRL, or in real life. They build a grappling gun, which is pretty dang cool. It is, before you get all wistful about hiding it in your pocket the way that like Batman does in the animated series, it's not quite that level. It's more of a thing you wear, not only strapped to your arm, but also because you realize, it yanks the heck out of your shoulder. It's actually kind of good to have a harness, kind of like if you were going to rappel down the side of a building. So it's a little bit more involved, but still pretty dang cool that he's got the little gun part that shoots out the grapple, and then he can winch himself up, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think you'd have trouble fitting this into a bread box, to be honest with you.
Right.
All right, cool.
Where do I sign up? I want one.
Yeah, and this should have gone on to the sad news. Gilligan's Island Marianne has passed away, Dawn Wells, at the age of 82, and of course a victim of COVID, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I saw that one the other day, and I sort of thought to myself, amongst all the tragedies of COVID, this is certainly another, which is the totality of it is a horrible thing. But she had a great life and a long life, and obviously propelled that sort of one, all things being equal, short-lived experience into a lifetime of experiences. And she used to come to those pop culture events like Fan Expo here in Canada and San Diego Comic-Con and stuff like that, and was apparently a sweetheart, a genuinely nice person, and everybody who interacted with her said she was a delight, and really enjoyed meeting people, and so I'm going to look at her life not by its tragic ending, but for the totality of its wonderful experiences and the joy that her sweet innocent Marianne brought to us all those years.
Yeah. And she was on stage as well. It's just not just Gilligan's Island. She did have a life after Marianne, as it were, after she got off the island. Right. Yeah. Anyway, that takes us into the main feature of this evening's show, which is to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 12, There Is a Tide, ... And Jaime is going to do the recap.
Yeah, we start off right in the middle of the action as the USS Discovery is getting blasted by Osira's Viridian. But this is really just a ruse because they're heading towards Starfleet headquarters. So this is a ruse to try to trick the Starfleets into letting them in, and presumably
they stole this from the Mandalorian. I just want to say,
yeah, it's got that sort of a vibe to it. Not the first time we've seen in media for this trick to be done. Admiral Vance is very much unsure about letting them inside. He's like, comms are down. What's going on here? We do go inside the bridge of the Discovery, where apparently old movies are taking up a small bit of space in the database, and it's like the only thing that they can't delete, as they've put their new operating system, their own Emerald Chain tech, in the Discovery's computers. And the guy that I wrote is Pirate Dude, because I didn't know his name at the time when I wrote this note. Zara comes back onto the scene and shows like, hey, the ice stuff didn't finish me off on that planet. He shows the bridge crew who is being held captive in the ready room, and so that's sort of where the split is. For somewhere in here they mentioned they're like, they've shoved everybody off who's unimportant off into the brig, and other places, but the bridge crew is sort of the premium sort of crown jewels of the hostages, so they're keeping those folks in the ready room as a collective place for them, and that'll be important later. We end up seeing Book's ship going through, I believe, a transwarp corridor. Can't remember if they mentioned what it was, but it's a cool space tube. But there's all sorts of debris of blown up ships in there, and apparently this is why couriers themselves tend not to use the courier network, because it's pretty dangerous to be going super high speed when there's all this stuff that's right in your path. So we see some cool stuff as this ship.
It was a really neat effect. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and then we know that his ship is able to reconfigure itself on the fly. So it uses that to change shape where it would have plowed into something otherwise. Pretty neat special effects there, and all the what I assume are ships that were using the tube and then blew up during the burn or something. And so they've littered the heck out of that thing. Yep. So Admiral Admiral Vance is about to let in the Disco into the secret Starfleet base when Michael and Book arrive and pull a 100% Anakin Skywalker or Jake Lloyd by flying right into the shuttle bay, very similar to Episode 1, if you've seen that. And so USS Discovery ends up inside of... wait, did I write that down right? Do they end up inside of the barrier at this point?
They do get let in at one point.
So basically as Disco is just being let in by Vance, at the exact same time Book pilots his ship through, so because the Discovery has to lower its shields, I guess, to go through there. So they basically hit them at the exact same time that they're going through the barrier, and they end up inside, and then the Disco ends up inside the barrier.
So it's like a Tofurky.
I see. So that's what they
Yes, Tofurky, that's right. It's the Tofurky strategy.
Yeah, the Tofurky maneuver.
And so we end up getting into a different scene here in engineering where engineer, I think is Aurelian, I wrote his name somewhere elsewhere.
Yeah, I had him as Aurelio.
Aurelio, thank you. Is impressed by the spore drive tech, which is 930 years old, and it's something like, oh, this is going to be an interesting thing to try to replicate here because of what it can do and get rid of the yoke of dilithium as being a barrier for them.
I had written it down. So they called him the Invigilator Aurelio, and this forced my son and I to pause the show and look up Invigilator because it's such an unusual word, and I'm pretty good with words, but I'd never heard of an Invigilator before. So we looked it up, and according to the online world, an Invigilator is a person who watches an exam to make sure that people don't cheat.
Oh, okay.
This is Eli?
No, this is Aurelio. This is the scientist guy.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Osira calls him Invigilator Aurelio, and he's the person who watches the exam to make sure they don't cheat, which is funny.
By the way, the thing we were talking about was turducken, not Tofurky.
Oh, right, turducken. That's right. The turkey, the duck stuck in a turkey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the chicken stuffed into a duck into a turkey.
Still never tried that. Anyway, sort of to throw that in there, Jaime, but I just the term really sort of caught me off guard, and I don't know how that applied in this circumstance. Why they chose that term for him?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you've also got the other guys that are called regulators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the stormtrooper thugs that Zara is leading there. So they use some confabulator Bob is what they end up having for some of these guys' names. So we end up looking at inside of Book's ship. The radiation meds apparently works super fast because Michael is not looking too good, and Book gives her some radiation meds to save her, and he also gives her a device that will hide her life signs so that it will be much more difficult to have her be detected when she's running around in Discovery in what is essentially the Die Hard episode is what we're getting into here. They give you each other the I love you, I know sort of spiel to each other.
Yeah, no, wait, we have to really hurry because we got to go, but let's kiss first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, they had that.
By the way, I just want to take a side note here for a second. Sidebar. So I was watching all the Star Wars movies, as I mentioned earlier, and I watched Solo, and there's a scene where Han Solo crashes the Millennium Falcon into the planet, and he and Lando Calrissian are looking down at the ship, and he says, "I hate you," and he says, "I know." Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
So at this point, Admiral Vance has figured out that this is a trap. This is not
it's a trap.
The Discovery crew. So he gets weapons hot, gets all the starships there, ready to prepare to be firing upon the Discovery, destroying it if necessary. And Book is captured and brought to the little ready room prison and gets sucker punched by Zara. Elsewhere in one of the hallways, we see a random dude, a regulator stormtrooper guy, sort of taking a souvenir, I guess, trying to take one of those badges off the wall, the ones that were put up on the wall by the crew to commemorate the folks that were lost. And he gets attacked by Michael, who then gets stabbed in the leg, but Michael heroically taps him out. I kind of thought he was dead, but apparently he's not. He does show up later in the episode.
Oh.
He did show up elsewhere. So I wrote down here, she heroically taps him out, thinking he was dead, but it seems like he's not. This is not good because she is now injured and and hobbling around, right? So she's even more of a disadvantage when it comes to her diehard mode. So Admiral Vance ends up talking to Osyraa over their holographic comms, and Osyraa's like, hey, guess what? I will let everyone but the bridge crew free to go with these shuttles. You know, I need to keep some hostages, some premium ones, just to keep you honest, so you don't blow up the ship while I'm on it. Meanwhile, in the Discoveries, I don't think she's in the tubes yet. I think she's still in the corridor. Michael is cauterizing her wound with a phaser-like device, very kind of Rambo-like. It doesn't seem as nice as using like a medical device to do this. And she also takes this opportunity to send a secret message to her mom about Discovery being hijacked. So maybe there might be some help coming from that route, from the Vulcan-Romulan alliance sort of thing. And we do end up with Admiral Vance and his entourage personally greeting Osyraa and her entourage to have a little meeting of the minds there. Meanwhile, man, there are so many intercuts. This is hard to keep track of.
Yeah, it was a busy episode. Yeah.
Meanwhile, within the ready room, I think it's Reese and Bryce that are like doing Morse code tapping to each other. But apparently, that is just a ruse to catch the attention of the guards, to get them all angry, and everybody is able to jump on the guards as, you know, they're sort of distracted and angered by the, hey, you know, don't communicate with each other thing. So they got the drop on them. So this is good. And they ask the Andorian named Rin, you know, hey, can you hack into this lockdown OS? We need you to do some stuff here, right, and change the game for us. Switching back to a different scene, we are in the conference room, or I guess conference room is the best thing to describe, where you're going to have a whole bunch of talk from Osyraa and Admiral Vance, and we learn that these holos, the holographic projection folks, are apparently also used as lie detectors, and it's less offensive than having like a red light show red when you're lying. So as he's negotiating with Osyraa, he's going to know apparently pretty convincingly whether she is lying or not, based on what this holo medical hologram type thing is going to be able to sense from her.
His name is Eli.
Eli, that's right.
Yeah.
There is a bit of a funny bit where, you know, there's bruised egos about how easy it was to take over the Discovery. So easy that I thought it was a trap. You know, like you couldn't possibly be this easy to take over.
Yeah, pretty harsh.
A little bit of a sick burn there. Yeah. But she follows that up with a kind of interesting sort of ploy here of saying, hey, you know, she wants the Emerald Chain to unite with the Federation because we're running out of dilithium, and you have a spore drive that can't be replicated, but I've got the smartest scientists working on it, the aforementioned, is it Invigilator Aurelio. and she's got this cool quote here of, you know, you're a chain of planets, we're a federation of mercantile exchanges, which I thought was a real nifty line for her to put in there. Zara is on the bridge. He gets warned that they have an intruder, and he knows that, you know, Michael is there in the Jefferies tubes, although he doesn't know the identity, right? Just knows that there is an intruder, but this is who it is. We switch over to engineering, where Aurelio is interrogating Stamets, and Stamets is having kind of an interesting conversation. You know, apparently he knows his Andorian operas, so he's able to recognize the music that Osyraa had left turned on for the Invigilator, and he also notices these like Orionians mating signals, like something related to like was it jewelry or punctures on the ear?
He's got piercings, these stud piercings behind his ear. They look like they're pierced right into his neck.
Yeah.
And they indicate that he's father.
Yeah, and how many times? Yeah,
and it's pretty heavily. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated here, but pretty heavily implied that he, Aurelio, and Osyraa are the ones who are involved with each other. Just given their
I got that vibe in this scene. I got that vibe too. But then I also, when later on he's talking about it, and when she's talking about it, I didn't get the same vibe. So I don't know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were just trying to keep it on the down low or what, because she seemed to know more about him and care a little bit more than just the.
Well, I got the impression that like he said that later on, he said that he found her when she was 10 or found him when he was 10 or something, and
his parents brought him to her when she was in charge and he was 10.
Yeah, and she saw the potential in him and kept him alive and whatever, in spite of his limits, right?
Yeah, right. So this is where the discussion comes up about regarded to the spore drive, where Stamets, my interpretation here is Stamets is trying to like really downplay the, like this really can't be replicated technology, right? Because one, you would need a tardigrade, which is what we were using before. And guess what? Those are extinct. I don't think that he actually knows this. This is me commentary here. I think he's just saying like, look, dude, we like ran into one and we've never seen another one. And assuming that they're, just running around the universe and a very common thing, like I think this is a little bit of a lie here to try to downplay like how easy would it be to replicate, right? And he hears from the engineer that like, hey, you have tardigrade DNA inside you. Stan was like, you'd have to kill me to get it out. And the guy's like, no, actually, we could probably just grow tardigrade cells. It's so much better.
There was some
than,
sort of
replicate
happy accident thing that happened where there was some sort of weird, he got bit by a radioactive spider or something like that. There was something, don't you remember? There was something weird about him in particular in season 1 when they're first developing the spore drive.
For Stamets? I thought they had just said, we'll merge it together. Did he get bitten by the radioactive tardigrade?
No, there was some like, because he does say that in the show, in this episode, there was something that happened that you can't replicate. That's what he said in the episode. And because I vaguely remember there was some, because why him? Why can't they just get another person less valuable as a character to be the spore drive person, right? There was something in season 1.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I guess as we're spitballing on there, it's like, well, we know that they can clone people, right? Like way, way, way back, they cloned Engineer Tucker from Enterprise so that they could get some living body parts from him, from the clone. So I don't think it'd be unreasonable to clone tardigrade Stametses and then put the little brain control box on them. That might be a really unethical but very doable sort of way of getting the spore drive to work. So going back into Die Hard mode, we have Michael, having to avoid the captors, and eventually they figure out where she's at. She's in the Jeffries tube, so they are very smart to say, well, if you go in through these, 5 different Jeffries tubes, you can corner her, right? But Michael starts a fire to cause the fire suppression protocol initiatives to initiate and flush out the captor regulator, which is pretty interesting. I think her boots went with her too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I actually wrote it down as Burnham gives their enemies the boot. She's holding on.
I think this further goes down the Die Hard thing, because he's like, shoeless the entire movie when the whole thing happens, and Michael sends a little communique to Zara that's essentially the yippee-ki-yay scene from Die Hard is how I wrote this down.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. It was their little homage to Die Hard.
Back over in the conference room, apparently is a very nice fruit plate that Admiral Vance and Osyraa can eat from. Admiral Vance apparently has not eaten a real apple. He's only had replicated ones, and he's like, it's made of our feces, but at least we don't have to uses either atrocities for it. So.
Yeah, he says it in a much more blunt 4-letter word, which is it was
and
very
she very
funny.
slowly takes the apple out of her mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was kind of interesting how Osyraa was like, look, you need to validate our way of life, the Emerald Chain's way of life, by acknowledging that capitalism is happening within the Federation already. As an example, Deep Space 253, that has apparently been trading with the Emerald Chain for almost a century, I think is what she says. Mm-hmm. Right? But this is where the cool sort of stuff starts to happen with the negotiations, where Vance, he says like, all right, interesting ideas, good thoughts here. Well, I'm going to need the Emerald Chain to step away from Kwejian and not be oppressing those people. It's a show of good faith. This is around the time that both Osyraa and Admiral Vance have their underlings come in to let Vance and Osyraa know the situation that's going on the disco. And Osyraa pulls out this interesting, called it a contract. It's more like a treaty where, they, being the Emerald Chain, commit to avoiding Prime Directive violations, and they have a 15-year walk back from Kwejian and other worlds like it, right? So trying to compromise as politicians here.
And an end to slavery at that.
Yeah.
Because he calls her out on her slavery too, right? I often wondered about that too, because they never really talk about the Orion. I mean, the first appearance of the Orion slave girl is in the original pilot, right?
True.
Yeah, and they make a point of saying that in previous episodes, well, weren't the Orions previously slaves? And that was ancient history. That's not how we are anymore, so it's how the tables have turned, right?
Right.
back within the little Ready Room prison, Rin, the Andorian, is going to hack the life sensors on board the Discovery to make it look like there are thousands on board. Essentially, just replaying all the sensor records for everybody who's ever been on board. Right, cause chaos for the regulators. And Book and Rin are going to stay behind with their guns to sort of hold down the little fort there, while the Disco bridge crew dash out of the room to go cause some chaos. Back over in engineering, Aurelio and Stamets are arguing over whether something is a hijacking or hostage taking. We get a sob story from Aurelio about his genetic defect and about there not being really a role for science and what he does in a very difficult to travel universe, which is quite a bit different than the era that the Disco came from. Michael comes in to stun Aurelio and the guard. Back over elsewhere, Rin and Book prepare for their door to be breached. Way back, man, there's so many cuts. Way back over engineering, Stamets refuses to leave the spore drive because he wants to be ready to jump back ASAP. Right, he's very concerned for Culber and Adira for sure. Right, like who he considers part of his collective family unit.
Yeah, and he makes that plea to Aurelio earlier on. He sort of says, I see you have a family, I have a family too. They're back in the nebula. I need to get back to them, or they're going to die. I'm going to lose my whole family. So he makes the plea to Aurelio, and then follows it up later with the plea to Burnham. Right.
Right. Little Vulcan nerve pinch here saves the day.
Yeah, Vulcan nerve pinch. Woo.
Michael's able to subdue him for a bit. Back over in the conference room, we have Vance reading the docs that he was provided, while Osyraa wonders who the Hollow is based upon. Eline's not based on anybody. Very different from the old, like EMH that was based on a real person or persons. And apparently these are computer generated in the this person does not exist.com sort of way.
Yep.
Sort of interesting and weird there. And here Vance is like, all right, this is cool. Interesting compromise here. Who's going to be the official face of the Emerald Chain? And Osyraa says her scientist Aurelio. But guess what, Maury Povich, that was a lie. Because actually, she's essentially going to be sort of the puppet master, right? And to counter this, Vance is saying like, hey, look, in order for this to work properly, I'm going to need you to stand trial for your crimes to send a message. Right. The burn left us with scarcity that clouds our moral clarity, and we need to sort of work past that. And the only way to work past that is you got to stand trial for your stuff. Osyraa's really not happy with that. Right. She definitely wasn't on the up and up with this. Hey, we should all combine together and be happy friends sort of thing. Shows he ends up back on the bridge of the Disco because this conference has not gone as well as she had hoped. And Book and Rin have been captured. There's some nastiness that's about to happen, so Osyraa wants Aurelio off the bridge so he doesn't have to witness this. She goes over to threaten Rin, who suddenly has grown a spine, as she notes.
Yeah, Aurelio stays on the bridge, by the way.
He does. This is important because it's very clear that she's going to kill him, or at least is very much in danger of that happening. So Book sort of breaks down and says, look, man, look, the dilithium is in the Veruba Nebula. That's why we're there. It's totally dangerous, but I've got a chart that a path that I made through that it's totally doable. And Sarah's like, all right, that's cool. And then just very coldly and casually kills Rin, obliterates him, disintegrates him, with notably Aurelio on the bridge seeing this. And he was the one who was like, well, she's not as bad as people say, right? And it seems like that's not true. She's definitely way worse than he thinks, whatever his view of her is.
Yeah.
And Michael is off somewhere else. I'm not actually sure where she is on the ship, but she's trying to get Stamets safely off the ship by putting him in a Kinder egg of sorts and setting a phaser to blow up so it'll blow a hole in the hull and suck him out safely ensconced in this. What it reminded me of is the transport mechanism from Galaxy Quest, where they sort of encase him. Encase him in a container and shoot him out.
I got the hook system from Dark Knight, The Dark Knight, where he's trying to apprehend the guy in Hong Kong, and he he has him basically just the hook comes and just basically picks him off the roof and drags him away.
So Stamets is not asleep, because we did mention that he was Vulcan nerve finch, but he had woken up. He's like desperately telling Michael not to do this. He wants to jump back. They're gonna die. And she's like, "Look, man, you can't be captured. Like, I understand that your situation, but we can't let them destroy the Federation by having control of the spore drive." So he gets sucked out in the little container and tractor beamed in, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from elsewhere.
Yeah, and he plays it really hard there too. He says, we sacrificed for you. We came back for you, so you wouldn't be alone. We're with you. We're your family. Don't do this. Don't make me lose my family. I already lost you once. I can't lose them again. Like he's really, really playing it hard, and she's moved. Again, good acting by both of them. She's tearing up. She knows how hard this decision is, what she has to do, but she is thinking of the greater good, and he's thinking of his family.
Yeah. We do end up with Zara pulling a gun on Michael, so she is captured when we get here towards the end of the episode. We go elsewhere as the bridge crew has beaten up some regulators and gotten access to some guns where they see and hear some weird sounds, so they're all there, ready, guns, double fisting the guns and ready to shoot stuff. And what do we see? But those cute little repair robots come out of the shadows, and apparently that's where the sphere data has been hiding, maybe in some sort of network. So they're all ready to kick butt and chew bubblegum, and that's where we end the episode.
Take names, yeah.
Yeah, the dot 23s, they call them, the dot 23s.
Right. So a couple of things here. I wanted to just follow up on Stamets, and I'm going to read from Memory Alpha. It says that he was a Discovery spore drive specialist, and the first to make the spore drive travel viable by using himself as an organic navigation computer, but making him an invaluable or making the ship an invaluable asset, right? But his frequent exposures to the mycelial plane led him to exist partially outside the universe's normal flow of time, and caused progressive neurological damage to him. And there was a point there where Lorca made him jump into made him do one jump too many. Remember there was an episode.
Yeah, he makes him do like 56 jumps or something like that, right?
Yeah. So they end up in the mirror universe, and that's when he ends up catatonic, and it is Ensign Tilly that gets him out of that situation. Using his knowledge, he's able to plan. He planned to return back to the Prime universe, destroying the super mycelial reactor of the Terran Empire flagship ISS Charon. Yeah, so he's sort of like, he doesn't exist, because of his overexposure to the mycelial network. He's no longer just a guy, right?
Yep. So
they can't really replicate that, that sort of knowledge that he has, right?
Yeah.
Unique knowledge.
Yeah, I wanted to I have one statement and one question. I just wanted to shout out the actor who plays Admiral Vance, Oded Fehr. I thought this was a really great episode for him. Really good performance. I think he crushed it. I thought he was really, really good. He's kind of popped in and he's had some good sort of ups and downs, and he's been a bit of an evolving character, but the interactions and the interplay between him and Osyraa in this episode, and the fact that he isn't just a complete fool. Like in some of these episodes, he would have been the fool who was fooled by the ruse, and he's sort of very, very wary, very, very, and I think they built that character so you could see him behaving the way he did through that whole experience of, I'm waiting till the very last second to make this call, and then once they're through and they're still haven't gotten it figured out, he figures it all out really fast and is basically like, get guns on that ship right now, and is basically like, if it's got to come down to it, we are blowing that thing to smithereens. Like, I thought it was good. And then the whole interaction with Osyraa, I thought both of the actors, although I found her accent kept popping in and out, and it made me want to punch my television screen, because I don't know if she is naturally British.
She's from Toronto.
Okay, well, her accent dipped into like almost a British accent like 4 times, and I was like, why?
I thought she was kind of doing like an Orion kind of thing, right? So
yeah, but it was inconsistent. Like, it was just, that's the thing. Like, if you're going to do an accent, pick an accent and go for it. If you're not going to do an accent, don't do it. But she kind of waffled a little bit, and that was. But
she does have that sort of. I know what you mean. Like, there definitely is an intonation.
Affectation, yeah. There's an affectation somewhere in there.
But I think it's supposed to be something unique to her species, right?
Yeah, again, I get that she was making a choice, but if you're going to make a choice, commit to the choice.
Right.
And she didn't. She was kind of all over the place, which was a little grating by the end. I was like, stop that. Stop doing that.
But maybe that's the whole point of this character. Maybe she's supposed to, like, because she, like, here's this character that everybody fears, right? That knows her. And here she is meeting Vance for the first time, and she's totally snowing him with this armistice treaties and all that kind of stuff. And she's able to fool the thing into saying she's lying, right? In fact, she even says, let me try that again when he does call her out for lying about who's going to really be in control, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. It was an interesting thing, because I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, when is the shoe going to drop or what, right? Because, are they just going to, shake hands and have a good time from now on? And I was waiting for Vance to sort of make to decide or not decide or something, You're right. It was probably the best episode for him for sure.
Yeah, I thought so. Both as an actor and as he gets a meat to chew on, right? And he did really well. The two questions I had, the first one is, do you guys think that she was earnest, or was this all just a snow job, that she was basically going to say, yo, we'll all be pals, and then she was going to stick a knife in them? Or do you think she was earnest in, I'm forcing my way in here to get your attention, but I really do want to negotiate for peace? Because Eli does, validate, right? He says, no, she's telling the truth.
Yeah, this is where I kind of thought, what I thought was happening was she was going to do the whole, yeah, we can be pals, and yes, we'll have all these concessions and stuff like that, and yes, whatever. But you're right. I mean, the writers were right in saying that there was never any sort of discussion about, okay, who's actually going to be the face of this? Who's going to be the ultimate power behind it? And it sounded like, like in Canadian politics, we had a power play like this, Jaime, where we had two conservative parties that came together, and the one guy who was like the last person you would want to be the one who gets to step forward and be the face of the party, the new party, it turned out to be Stephen Harper, who eventually became our prime minister. So we've lived through this whole situation already, right?
Yeah, he basically portrayed themselves as,
friendly and good for Canada. And
it was like, well, this one part of the party is more extreme and hardcore conservative. The one part is more sort of medium conservative. We're going to merge the party, and then it'll be something in between. Like, no, basically you were a Trojan horse, and you guys were the really ultra conservative ones the whole time.
Yeah, so I think that's what I kind of got the impression that there had to be some reason. I mean, her approach was, neither one of us has dilithium. Let's sort of like be nice. I mean, because it was kind of a surprise to me as to that she actually wanted to negotiate for peace, or but that to me sounded like something of a the ruse of we'll come in and we'll be friends and all that kind of stuff. At the last minute, we'll show our teeth, right, sort of thing.
Yeah,
which is a typical vehicle in a lot of these kind of storylines, right? Where there's always some, like you can't change a leopard's spots is the expression I'm thinking of, where you're always gonna be, she couldn't have got to where she is today without breaking a few. She wouldn't have made that omelet without breaking a few eggs, right? I don't want to mix too many metaphors.
How about you, Jaime? What was your take on this?
I think it might be sincere, but in the, well, if I can take over things without having to shoot everyone, that's a pretty good con, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can convince the enemy that this is all for their benefit. I don't know. Given that she's prone to just killing folks like Rin, it's hard to tell that she actually would be of the kind to be sinister and pull strings from behind the scenes, or what. Like, I could go either way. It's kind of 50-50 to me whether it was just a ploy to do what exactly. Maybe trick them to come in with their guns not ready and then you shoot them in the back, or if it was if I can be the one controlling things from behind the scenes, I'm effectively the queen without any of the responsibility, right? And I can control everything as the emperor, empress. So not sure. Hard to make a bet on that one.
Yeah. The other question I had is a pretty simple one, but it was simply, why the hell was Rin with them when they were out exploring the Rudin Nebula and all that stuff? Clearly he's aboard the ship because he's a prisoner in this episode. why the hell was he on the ship? They brought him back to Federation headquarters. Why did they bring him back out for that mission? It makes no sense.
Wait a minute. So you mean he wasn't on Discovery the whole time, or
he wasn't? Well, he was theoretically. He was on Discovery the whole time, but they rescued him from slavery when they rescued Book.
Yeah,
and they brought him back, and he shared information with the Federation, and then he they give him a room on Discovery, and he gets to hang out, and they're like, we're going on a mission to this very dangerous part of the.
There's a whole bunch of people living in the shuttle bay, right? We've discussed this.
Yeah, like I just don't understand why it would make no sense to me why he would still be aboard the ship other than a plot convenience. Like to me, it was very incongruous. When he showed up at the beginning of this episode, I thought he wasn't in the last episode. Why the hell would he have been on Discovery when they had gotten him to a safe place where, like he was enslaved, they cut off his antennae, like he was, all these different things. Why was he still on the ship? To me, it didn't make any story logical sense other than we want him to be there so he can get dusted by Osyra later.
Yeah, trekking back where he was at. So he was on Discovery at least when Tilly sort of asks him, like, hey, what's going on?
They were having lunch or something, and she came and sat with him.
Yeah, she comes and sits with him and that. But even in that episode, you're like, well, wouldn't he have logically been taken into the Federation custody and they would have debriefed him and then said, okay, you're going to need asylum. We'll set you up somewhere here. You can, you've been enslaved, you've been butchered. Put your feet up and take it easy for a little bit, and we'll
maybe they were
for
keeping
Orion information.
They were keeping him around for this last stand with Book, obviously.
Oh, I mean, I get it. I don't know. I mean,
and that's why the writers kept him on the ship, right?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it seemed incongruous. It just didn't make a lot of sense.
So this is an interesting thing. I think we should acknowledge Noah Averbach Katz, who plays Rin, Toronto's own, Canada's own, because I have a feeling he'll be back in another role. And the reason why I say that is, Aurelio is played by Kenneth Mitchell, who played Cole in the first 9 episodes of Discovery. Yeah, so they seem to be recycling. It's good. I guess it's good to be an actor in Toronto. Young, able-bodied actor in Toronto, because
who's willing to put on a lot of makeup.
Yeah, because you're getting roles, right? Well, in this case, he didn't have makeup on, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, but then we could bring back the guy who played Rin. Noah could come back and different alien, different time. We established that, right? The guy who's played Linus has played like 3 different parts, and yeah, Linus. Well, go Toronto casting. Woo.
Mm-hmm. Who's Linus played else otherwise?
I think we established he played another alien in a previous episode, because we looked him up. I looked him up when we were talking about him during the episode where his skin was peeling off. Yeah. So this was part 2 of the 3-part
finale,
Bonanza finale.
Yeah, Bonanza finale. Yeah.
I must admit, halfway through the episode, I wrote down a note that said, "What is this? Unification Part 4? Like, what's the?" she comes to him and is like, "We should unify. We should become the new Federation." I was like, oh. I think the most telegraphed thing was, of course, that Burnham sends the transmission to her mother, right?
Yeah,
that to me it immediately sort of says, okay, well, because she says Mayday, and then she sends the transmission through subspace to her mom. Okay, so does that mean that her mom and we're going to get a reunion with the?
Well, her mother's in the bubble, right? Because it wasn't she when they had when Michael was on trial. Where was she on trial in that episode with the 3?
Oh, was it the new Romulus Vulcan homeworld, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. So she's not even in this bubble thing.
No, she's not. Her mom is actually back living with the what's the name of the religious order? I can't recall it off the top of my head.
Yeah, the Candor people.
Yes, the Way of Ultimate Candor.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back. I have my notes right here. But yeah, she's back there with them. So to me, that seems like it's a telegraph for the next episode of, hey, we're gonna do this.
Tracy Pollard is
Nivar. Yes, Nivar. Yes, Kawat Milat. Yeah, so I wonder if we're gonna get, the Nivar to the rescue. They've made this, stand. I did think it was interesting that they didn't go back and show us what was happening with Saru and Culber. But I think it was a good choice in the way that they told this story. And we've talked about the way that they've sort of done these episodes. You know, we talked about the sort of one with Emperor Zhou and how they were sort of trying to weave that in with the plot of what was happening in the universe, regular Prime universe. In this case, I think it makes a lot of sense because it really does lend an imperative to Stamets's urgency, right? Like, he's saying, oh my God, we've got to get back. They're going to die. They're going to die. And last we saw was basically, Stamets was freaking out because Culber and Saru and Adira are behind. So when he's like, oh my God, we got to get there, in our minds, we don't really have a sense of how long all this is taking, but we know that it's taking so long that things are not going to be good for the three of them who are there, right? So I think as a storytelling method, I think that really worked in this case, as opposed to sort of popping back and forth and interweaving those two stories. I think actually completely removing them from this episode really does add that emotional heft to how he's feeling, because we're feeling it too. Hey, what's happening with Culber? What's happening with Saru? What's happening with Adira? Are they going to be okay? Although, having seen the effectiveness of those anti-radiation meds that they gave to Burnham at the beginning of the episode, I think, well, Adira had those. They're going to need those. Maybe they'll be fine that way too.
Yeah, they made a point of having her in popping them in her mouth and beaming out on the in the preview, right?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they wrap all this up. It's been an interesting season, and they've woven together, the trip to the future, new worlds, new characters, the mystery of the burn. It's been a big, busy season. The dilithium thing. It's been a really big, busy season with a lot of stuff to chew on, and it's so far, I think, been pretty satisfying. It'll be interesting to see how they are able to land this. Although I think, again, they sort of telegraphed that if they're bringing back some of these characters next season, that not like they're going to change the status quo like they did last year, where things flash forward. It sounds like they're going to find some sort of resolution within this time period and go forward from there. Care to postulate? Anybody have any thoughts on how this is all going to wrap up? They all live happily ever after?
Well, they're going to go back and they're going to find them huddled around with like a space blanket around them to keep themselves warm. I don't know. I mean, again, how are they going to convince? They could almost do a whole episode to convince the young kid, the Calpian kid, to leave, and go outside, right?
Yeah, Sikal.
Yeah, and then they also have to deal with the Andorian taking over the ship, right? Not Andorian.
The Orions, yeah.
Orion taking over the ship.
Yeah.
They have to deal with Jack Weber too, who plays Zara.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they. I think the thing that I'm most interested to know is this season going to eliminate the threat of the Emerald Chain, or is this going to be a victory over the Emerald Chain, and the Emerald Chain are going to continue to be a thorn in the side of the Discovery and the Federation for a few more seasons? I think that will be the real sort of telling thing. Yeah. I personally would prefer if this was a small victory, so that it's not just, and Osyraa is beaten and the chain is dissolved and it's all fine, and I really kind of want it to be, I like the idea of an overarching. I like seasonal villains. I like the idea that you have a evil Lorca, or Mirror Lorca, or whatever, and then you defeat him and he dies and you move on. And in season 2, of course, we got the whole we got to get out of here. This Section 31 / the we are not Borgs. It'll be interesting to see if this is something that is setting up a longer term future, or if it is going to be something that is just reconciled and then they start fresh again in season 4.
I'd be interested to see how they wrap things up, because we've talked about the hold my beer moments that Discovery tends to get into with season 1 and season 2, and I thought they were on a pretty good pace for season 3, but they've built up quite a bit here to take care of in the last hour or even hour and a half.
Think they'll kill Culber again? How ballsy would that be?
Oh man, I can only imagine the letters they'll be getting.
We killed one gay, but we brought other LGBTQ plus characters in, so it's okay. Is it?
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that'd be so terrible.
Oh man,
they went that route.
Yeah, but then of course we joke about it, but and actually we had some great interaction this week thanks to Tim with Rekha Sharma, who they keep bringing back and killing. Right? Seems like she's got a good sense of humor about it, but let's keep bringing back Culber and killing him off again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, How can they keep this going? Like, yeah, there's a lot to wrap up in this one.
Well, that's why I say I think it would be better. I think it would be better for sort of cementing this as the status quo of them in the future and them as part of the bigger whole and the Federation and Starfleet. If it was a small victory, if it was just, hey, Osira got away, but we retook the ship, we saved this kid, we figured out the burn, now let's go forward from here. I feel like if they tried to wrap all this up, I feel like it's going to be challenging to do that well in an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it is. Are you guys ready to move on to Wonder Woman? So all of us got a chance to watch Wonder Woman 1984. Jaime got the HBO Max package, so he got that as a bonus for having a month of that. Tim, you and I each spent the 30 Canadian dollars to rent for 48 hours Wonder Woman. I watched it this afternoon with my son.
I think for me, I found it more consistent than the first Wonder Woman. And people might be wondering, I'm one of the contrarians that says I like the first 2/3 of Wonder Woman and then really feel
the battle with the god, you didn't really like that part?
Yeah, I didn't really like how the final third ended up, that movie. So for me, I find it's very even across the board. Now I don't know that it reaches the highs of Wonder Woman, because it does to me feel like it's got that like that 1980s superhero sort of cheese going for it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I just don't think that I don't think it really sat with me as a movie that I'm gonna like watch repeatedly, you know.
Yeah. How about you, Tim?
It was interesting from the point of view of how you look at Wonder Woman as a character, in that she refuses to hurt people. Like, you know, she avoids killing people. She avoids, you know, she breaks guns rather than using them on people throughout the whole movie. She's got a sort of very different perspective against crime fighting, as it were.
Well, you could make an argument that it's the female perspective over the male perspective, right?
Well, I was kind of alluding to that without spelling it out in so many terms, you know?
Yeah.
To be politically correct here, but yeah, I mean, that's the impression I got, is like it's sort of like you don't have to kill and maim and what. And then, by the way, I did watch Deadpool 2, which probably does enough killing in the first 5 minutes, but and dismemberment and whatever. Yep. But yeah, so. I mean, I definitely did notice that sort of thing too, and it was interesting. I was reading through the IMDb stuff, and I didn't realize that. I mean, obviously, I haven't read the books on Wonder Woman, but apparently, like a lot of the characters, Cheetah and Max Lord, are characters from the stories from the comic books, right?
Yes, they are. And, although different takes, obviously. I mean,
there's a different dude that has the wish power, and
the movies sort of take it a different direction, and they merge, 25 stories into one. And the story, each of you noted, the story was by Patty Jenkins and by Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns is someone who I know, and he's someone who has really, the last 20 years, really been one of the defining forces for DC storytelling, both in films, television, and in the comics. So this is somebody who really sort of gets this stuff, and I think he was sort of, cherry picking Wonder Woman stories and working with Patty and telling a really good amalgamation. Although you can debate whether or not all of it came together well.
I liked all the 70s and 80s references that were in the show. I mean, the wardrobe was very similar to what you would kind of see, a little bit over the top. Apparently the store in the beginning where the girls are shoplifting was actually really a store in Washington back then. It was sold punk and new wave stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, and so that was kind of a callback. That store has been long gone, but apparently people in the area. And I don't know if you noticed or not, I posted this on IMDb. As I said earlier, I was putting some stuff in. Wonder Woman is inside the Watergate Hotel. That's that building, that curve, where she's on the balcony. So so I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it became a condo at some point or whatever.
It did. It's no longer a hotel. It's a.
But
building.
In the 80s, though, I mean, because it was very much in the 70s. That's where the whole Watergate thing happened. Obviously, that's his name.
Yeah.
But so I thought that was cool. I've been to the gallery that they go to, he and her. her. I've been in that subway
The Air
tunnel
and
that they
Space
were
Museum.
in. Yeah, so that's all. And of course, I've been to the Air and Space Museum as well too, right? So
Yeah.
somebody pointed out on IMDb that there's you can see Steve Austin's ship that he crashes in and becomes a $6 million man, but that wasn't actually that accident wasn't really made for $6 million man. That was a real accident,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that ship is the real version of that test ship that was crashed, not intentionally crashed, but it hangs in the Smithsonian. But yeah, it's not just a thing for Steve Austin, right? But
Yeah.
and I've seen and there are literally people walking around and dressed as astronauts and inside there talking about 'cause I met one of the guys and was talking about layers of fabric and stuff because I knew Carol would be fascinated by that, right? So but yeah, I it was a good movie from that point of view. I mean, I was a little tired of the concept, I don't know, maybe it was
The
Pedro's
80s concept? Like which concept?
No, the whole I'll grant you the wish sort of thing. It kind of got old real fast, like it's their sort of Midas touch and whatever, right?
Yeah, I found the metaphor. I mean, the metaphor obviously was, it was very tied to the 1980s, right? The whole idea was this is, greed is good. You should always want more. Like it really did speak to that culture of the time too. So I get what they were going for in the sort of larger overarching, bigger, better, more was of the time. I'm not sure they nailed it.
That was a good point. It was very much the me sort of thing, right?
I mean, and everybody has something that they want, and it's never something simple, right? The president wants more missiles to do, like all these different layers of it, and then of course the ultimate depiction of that is the Maxwell Lord character, who is I want more, I want it all, I want everything, and then he comes to realize over time that what he wants is the most simple thing that's been at his fingertips the whole time. So not bad from that perspective. My issue with it was a very long drawn out way to get there.
I mean, in the movie or waiting for the 7 or 8 releases?
No, the movie itself. I mean, it is what it is. I think this would have been a fine thing to see in the theaters. I wouldn't have I don't regret spending the money that we spent on it today, and I wouldn't have regretted spending the money in the theater. There were some IMAX scenes,
obviously, we didn't get to enjoy, right?
Yeah, I mean, c'est la vie. That's, there are far, far bigger casualties in the world of we're living in right now than not being able to enjoy a movie like this on a big screen. Yeah. It is what it is. But so the movie opens, and we'll just say, minor spoilers. I won't get too far into it, but the movie opens with a very big action sequence with Wonder Woman trying to sort of be on the down low, but also be the hero, where she's, she sort of stops a crime in progress, and everyone's like oohing and awing, and it's very 1980s in the way that people are dressed and the place that she is and everything. And she's, it's probably, 6-7 minutes, this sort of action sequence where she foils this crime. And then we really sort of settle into, well, let's sort of see what her civilian life is like. Let's learn about her work. Let's learn about, we get introduced to Kristen Wiig as Dr. Barbara Minerva. And then we sort of go through all these different layers of that. I did not strictly time it, but I did passively time it. And between when she has that opening sequence and the next time we see her as Wonder Woman in action is over an hour. And I just found myself thinking, like, that is a sign that maybe you're trying to, I don't know, maybe they thought, well, we've already done the first movie, we don't have to get into as much of this stuff. We can actually take some time and get to know what's going on with her, and we can introduce the other characters. We spend a lot of time with Dr. Minerva, who I think was a pretty compelling character, and I really like Kristen Wiig as an actress, and I thought she was really actually quite compelling in this role. And then we spent a lot of time getting to know Pedro Pascal as Max Lord, outside the helmet for the first time we've seen him in a while, and it just really it just turned into like a drama for a while there. And then of course we get the big sort of surprise, which is not really a surprise. It's been in all the trailers of the return of Steve Trevor. It's just a long wait. It was a long movie with not enough Wonder Woman, and is the bottom bottom line. I get what they were going for. I get, and there's some value, I guess, in trying to sort of understand the motivations of Dr. Minerva, understand the motivations of Maxwell Lord, understand even the motivations of Wonder Woman. But for a Wonder Woman picture, there wasn't enough Wonder Woman for me.
Oh, really?
And I felt like, the sort of, be careful what you wish for. I thought it was very funny that the movie sort of bookended with, so the scene that opens the film is a young Diana on Themyscira, and she is competing against women. She's probably, 10?
Yeah, 12. The actress is 12.
Yeah, competing against women in this sort of competition, and she ends up, through no fault of her own, ends up having to cheat at one point, and then Robin Wright's character sort of pulls her down and says, you can't win, you cheated, cheaters never prosper. And the punchline to that is at the end of the movie, cheetahs never prosper. I thought it was a nice little sort of bookend to that one.
Well, there was also the bookend of the, you can't always have what you want. You can't take the easy way. And then when she's some semi-spoiler there, when she's facing off at the end with Max Lord, she comes to that same realization, and she can't have what she ultimately wants, right?
Yeah.
And she convinces, everybody else of the same story, the same thing, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, it's funny because I think what really made the first movie work was the chemistry. Well, I think the chemistry between Diana and Steve Trevor, and the chemistry between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot was great. And I think that really kind of made the first movie sing. And I think that's why the third act is a little bit weak, is it just sort of turns into this sort of like, big spectacle lightning bite thing.
Yeah, the gold suit was a bit much, but I suppose that,
Well, I meant in the first movie, but even in this one.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But I think it was the sort of awkwardness of Steve Trevor, first on Themyscira, and then with her as this sort of godlike being in 1916 World War I kind of world, and her sort of fish out of waterness there. In this one, they sort of flipped it where she's used to this, but he was the fish out of water.
Right.
And it's funny and it works, but they don't really do much with it. And it just kind of lacked a little bit of that charm. And I know I've read a little bit of this, obviously the movie is sort of, some people think it's perfectly fine and some people think it's not nearly as good. And one of the big criticisms was, well, she spends this whole movie not making the right decisions because of a guy. That it's not a very good feminist message in a female-centric movie, co-written by a woman, directed by a woman, starring a woman, to have it revolve around her being hung up on a guy and not being able to make the right decisions because she's hung up on a guy. And I get that. I completely respect that perspective. But I also think...
But is it about the guy or about the person she loves?
I guess that's where I approached it from, was this is the love of her life. She says, I will never love another person. He says, no, you should love another person. And she says, I haven't loved anybody since you. And at this point, it's supposed to be like, 70 years, give or take. She says, yeah, I've never loved anybody else. I'm never going to love anybody else. So I guess I am maybe more forgiving, and I'm sure that's my male perspective. But yeah, I just found like the love story wasn't strong enough to hold it together. The fish out of water stuff wasn't strong enough to hold it together. They didn't have enough action to hold it together. Overall, I'd say it was a perfectly enjoyable movie. It was, a solid 3 out of 5 stars, right? Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't poke holes in it. I got poke holes in it, but I wouldn't put it in the can, and I wouldn't elevate it to a pedestal, but it's perfectly fine. I think this was as good as Aquaman. I think this was as good, probably in its way, as the first Wonder Woman movie. I get why people would, sort of say, well, Max Lord and Cheetah as villains, maybe that's not as strong, although I thought the Cheetah stuff was fine. The idea that this person was so beaten down by her life that she was not willing to sort of go back and become the person she was before, and okay, I can get the motivations behind that. And I think the fact that they did spend that time developing her character made those choices valid. Pedro Pascal was just a scene-devouring monster in this movie. Like, his performance was wildly over the top.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've enjoyed him in everything else I've seen him in. I'm not sure that this was how I expected him to be in this film. And again, I get that he's being used as this giant metaphor for, you know, greed is good. You know, he was Gordon Gekko whacked out on cocaine and superpowers, right? Like that's essentially what we're dealing with here is, you know, greed is good, and, you know, in the end he learns actually, you know, what I want is this one thing. I don't know. I felt like it just felt like a bit of a wildly uneven movie. It was a little bit too long. It was a little bit light on action. It was a little bit thin on humor. It just felt like there was just not quite what it could have been, maybe.
Yeah, it's a 2.5 hour movie, so I think they definitely had plenty of time to deal with stuff where there are some things that feel a little overpacked with other non Wonder Woman-y stuff. To your point there, which I'm like, well, if you trim down some stuff, it probably could be a pretty solid 2 hour, maybe hour 45 movie, and maybe it might feel different.
Even if you just taken out the Maxwell Lord part and just had it be about the contradiction between Dr. Minerva and Diana Prince or Wonder Woman, where they're the sort of two sides of a coin, I think you could have probably cobbled something together there. Again, it was the sort of, you know, adding that layer of this, you know, avarice seeking man and you know, global calamity, and it just felt like it just kind of got out of control.
Yeah. For me, I think I kind of wonder how this movie would have done in the theaters, just given the complaints that we've had and the longer running time. Like I think it probably was the better decision to put this on Max, right? Where for me, it's like, oh, okay, well, I mean, basically spent my money to watch this, but I didn't, you know, I ate my own popcorn, I ate my own drinks and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't have any popcorn though. That was really bothered me. Our popcorn was apparently thrown out.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's funny. I'm scrolling through the reviews on IMDb, and I haven't found a good one yet. So yeah, lots of.
I didn't look to see what it was like on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, somebody said the most interesting one I saw is why is Warner Brothers, you know, destroying a gold mine in DC Comics?
Sorry, yeah, 61% for the critics and 74% for the audience.
I gave it 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean,
and I saw some criticism
it's
saying
not a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie.
No, it's not.
It's not the worst DC movie. Somebody here said it's the worst DC movie they've seen, or superhero movie they've seen. I think they're forgetting Green Lantern, and
there's been some stinkers.
Several other ones.
There have been some stinkers. Yeah,
again, 3, I think, or 4.
At its worst, Gal Gadot is a captivating person on screen. Chris Pine is very charming, and Kristen Wiig I thought was great. You know, those three things hold some of this together. There's certainly holes you could poke in this stuff, but no, it's by far not the worst of the DC movies, and by far not the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. I think part of our perspective is skewed because, as you pointed out, Tim, it's been talked about for years now. It's been built up, it's been delayed, it's going to be in the theaters, we're talking about it. I think that is part of the thing. Like, how was it ever supposed to live up to all that after all the delays and all the changes? And the weight of it is very heavy. I think if you had a bag of popcorn and you'd been in the theater and you'd seen the scenes where, you know, she's flying through the sky and whipping her lasso around and doing that stuff, I still think it would have been a little light on the action personally. But I think it would have been a perfectly enjoyable film going experience, and I think it was a perfectly decent experience here just on a television set. But again, I understand some of the values that people are putting on it from their perspectives, and I don't want to diminish that. You know, I have heard even just from some of my friends over the last week who are women who have sort of said, you know, I wasn't impressed with it. And these are the same people who were like, when the first one came out, saying like, it's about effing time, right? Like that we had this strong, confident lead who, you know, is not the sidekick, is not, you know, doing this for men, you know, like there was a lot of positivity and, you know, stuff we haven't seen from female characters in the past. And I can see why they would be upset with some of the circumstances of this film. But I think as far as comic book movies go, from a just broad perspective, I don't think it was quite as bad as maybe some people are making it out to be.
No. And you know, I also think too, from the 1980s sort of perspective, I mean, how do you spoil, like, how do you solve crime and how do you do research and stuff like that? And I mean, that from my perspective, that's what it was like back then. You had bits and pieces of paper and you looked at them, and there was no cell phones and there was no, you know, way of communicating in that sort of like now you just go on there's always a computer on a desk somewhere, and somebody goes on Google's and whatever, right? So I thought the 80s concept was interesting. Some, led to some funny points, right? I think I'd have to fact check them on some of the artwork that what they showed in the movie, because it might have been they might have been installed much later than the 80s, right? So
and there was one part that I thought was interesting too, where they
I have that watch that Steve Trevor has.
Oh, the Seiko?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a Seiko, but I have a Texas Instrument one like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I thought it was the one part where they were broadcasting the signal. Max Lord is broadcasting a signal to everyone as part of the bigger plot, and it's supposed to reach all the different things, and his son is watching it on an old
IBM terminal.
IBM terminal. Like at one, those were not color screens. They were one color screens.
They were green, yeah.
Yeah, and two, like, it wouldn't have been networked at that point in time, so there's just no world where that makes any sense at all. So that one took me over a second. I was like,
that's a good point. I looked up the computer model too, because I was putting that on IMDb, but you're totally right. I totally didn't miss that as a goof. Yeah,
it was
we
like
barely had animated GIFs at that time.
Yeah, I started my career as a professional journalist in...
Actually, they weren't GIFs either.
The mid-90s, and I was still working on a yellow screen TI computer.
Mm-hmm.
This is 1984. There's no world wherein that thing is A, networked, B, that quality, C, color. Like, none of that made sense to me at all. Again, I get it. Fine, whatever.
Yeah. But they were from that time, though. They were 1980 computers, those
Oh,
IBMs.
sure, yeah.
So
the ones on his desk, and yeah.
And Minerva has a Commodore PET on her desk.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, not a PET. It's an 8100 or something.
It's a bit of a shame, too, because I think they could have done even more with the Barbara Minerva character.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kristen Wiig should be a huge star. I think she's a really talented actor with a lot of range.
Yeah.
And, arguably she was, one of the co-stars of the Ghostbusters movie that they did, which also got kind of panned a little bit. And she has had, some more roles in different things.
She's a bridesmaid. She's a lead character in that.
She is, and she was fantastic in that. But again, I think she's got more, like, there was some drama to that too, but it was ostensibly a comedy. I feel like this would have been really nice to see her really break through here, because I really do think that she should be, a top tier Hollywood star, because she's so talented. And I think she did a lot with this character, but I feel like they didn't give her as much as
what did you actually think about
have.
The manifestation of Cheetah at the very end there?
I thought it was fine. I'm actually happy with the way that they did it, that it wasn't, it was neither too long in that she wasn't that for the entire movie. I like that it was sort of an evolutionary thing where she sort of went from being the timid to the the unknown, them sort of, I'm getting used to this, to the I'm okay, to the I'm confident, to the I'm arrogant, to the I'm an apex predator. I liked that they had enough time to do that with her. And so it didn't feel out of place, although I did think it was very funny because, again, I don't want to get too far into spoilers, but I thought the way that the fight culminated between the two of them, I thought that it was going to culminate in her death, given the circumstance, and it doesn't. And then there's this sort of whole story about how it all sort of reconciles in the end, and the decisions that people make, and they have to be okay with letting go of the decisions they've made. They never tacitly acknowledge, there's never strictly or tacitly acknowledge whether or not she makes that choice.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And I found that was a bit of a hole. And my only hope on that one is, well, maybe we'll see some other iteration of her down the road. So I've also pasted into our notes here right below that they've confirmed that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot will be back for Wonder Woman 3.
Okay.
So whether or not you enjoyed this, I think probably as part of the, I think a trilogy is probably the way that they were always intending to go. But I think part of the interruption of obviously the COVID circumstances that derailed it from being a theatrical wide, huge release. Yeah. I think the circumstances, I know that the stories online, if they're to be believed, are that because Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins would have gotten percentages from the box office, they basically cut them each $10 million checks and said, this is sort of it, to get them to go with this HBO Max and everything else. I think part of that was also, and we're going to make a third movie movie, and we're going to pay you both big salaries, and you're both going to get back end on that stuff too. So I'm not surprised at all they're making a third one, irrespective of what people think about this particular one. But maybe maybe we'll get Barbara Minerva back. I don't know. I'd like to see that. I think there's more to be had there with that character too.
Yeah, I did watch Justice League and Wonder Woman in preparation for this as well. They were on television the other day, so I don't remember if I finished watching Justice League though.
Well, you can always circle back and watch the Zack Snyder one.
Yeah, when is that coming out?
I want to say March.
Yeah,
do we have a date? I remember it was
early.
early 2021, I thought, but I can't recall if it was specifically nailed down. Because now that I'm subscribing to HBO Max, I'm like, so when's the next thing that gets my next month of subscription coming out?
Yeah. So Snyder, they posted a picture today. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think you're right, Jaime. I think they had speculated it was going to come this spring, but I don't think they put a time to it. And apparently, something I saw online this week, I didn't put it in here, but apparently Gal Gadot wouldn't or didn't participate in the reshoot stuff they did. So I don't know if she just wasn't necessary because they'd filmed what they already had and needed with her, or if they
reshot for Snyder.
Yeah, they were doing actual reshoots. So some of it they were repurposing. Some they were finishing stuff that they didn't do from a computer animation perspective. And some of it they actually went back and shot some more. And apparently she did not participate in that. And again, I don't know if that's I won't or I didn't. But you could release that as a separate episode if you want. Just put it in midweek special. Bonus episode.
Yeah.
Welcome to Spotcast. Here we are to talk about
Wonder Woman. Yeah. Let's get to our watch list. So, Jaime, you're up first.
Yeah, I've got the one that I had forgotten is not one that Jonathan will watch. Is The Midnight Sky on Netflix, because it does star George Clooney and the lady who plays Jyn Erso on Rogue One. I apologize for her name. I should have looked it up. I thought it was a good film. This is the yearly big Hollywood style movie that comes out on Netflix during the holidays. I thought it was pretty enjoyable.
Jones, for those of you driving home.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, the little girl in it too, I thought I'd seen her before, but apparently she's not been in other things before. But so this is a bit of a spoiler, but Ethan Peck is in this, Spock from our regular podcast plays a role in this too, as a younger version of George Clooney, right? So, which isn't really revealed, I guess, until near the end. This is why I'm sort of saying this is a spoiler, right, Jaime? Like, do we?
I guess. I mean, it sounded like it was.
Did you connect that it was the same guy?
Yeah, I thought it was him because it sounded like his same voice to me.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, spoilers that the George Clooney character and Ethan Peck are the same person.
Yeah,
you knew that, or you didn't know that?
Yeah, I thought they heavily implied it was. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I just jumped to conclusions and got right.
Yeah. No, I knew that. I knew that the Ethan Peck character was the girl's father, but I didn't get the Clooney connection. Until they mentioned his name at near the very end of the movie, right?
Oh, okay.
I'm trying not to give away the twist.
Yeah, but even still pretty. I mean, it's got space stuff, but reasonably grounded in reality, which is nice.
Well, sort of grounded in reality. I mean, like being Canadian and having to travel, 50 miles unprotected in winter weather. That's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. Who's winter?
He was like up north, like north of here, right?
Yeah. Then he's not going to do that.
Yeah. Like he had a parka on and yeah.
Oh, that ought to cover it then.
I mean, he starts off in a snowmobile, but it falls through the ice, as you can imagine, right? So, and he, he's in the freezing cold water and he gets out of the freezing cold water. Yeah. He must be Canadian.
Nice.
Anyway, it's a good movie. I mean, there's a character in the middle of the movie that comes along, and you kind of wonder, is he he's by himself up in the north, right? So, and he has his reasons for staying there, but is when this other character appears, is he imagining the character? Was the first thing I thought, when they appear on this in the story. But yeah.
So
it's an interesting interesting sort of a double-ended story. But I'm sure Jonathan could probably, if we could sit him down to watch it with the pinning his eyelids open.
Hey, I gotta admit, I'm way less out on George Clooney than I am on Tom Cruise. I have seen several George Clooney movies in the last 20 years, and quite enjoyed it.
It's not Gravity,
quite enjoyed a few of them. I must say, I've actually enjoyed some of his movies. I don't dislike him nearly as much. I do think he owes us all a little bit of something for that Batman movie he made, Bat Nipples.
True.
But
well, that wasn't just him, right? He was an actor. They were using his name to sell movies or sell popcorn. But it's directed by him too. So I mean, that's I think it was quite an interesting movie from that point of view. They didn't give too much away throughout the whole story. They could have, but they didn't. Anywho, what's your next pick there, Jaime? No, that I've ruined that one.
Yeah, this is the Star Wars prequel trilogy special edition, all caps, on YouTube, which is 6 hours worth of content here. This is a remake or remakes of the first episodes 1 through 3 by some chaps in New Zealand, I think. But it is the lockdown special where they took stuff, I think, largely out of their garage and replay pretty much all the scenes you would expect, but in a very low budget sort of way. And it's kind of fun to see their takes where they sort of break character a little bit as they're filming, and also when they animate stuff with like cheap cardboard cutouts, or it's like, okay, well, they've got a Jar Jar mask, fine, or at least a horse mask that looks like Jar Jar. But for some of the Jedi's, out in battle, it's like, well, we just printed out a face mask, like just printed out a sheet of paper, cut holes for the eyes, and put it on the actor, which is nice.
Funny.
And thankfully, the playlist has all of the different scenes with time codes, so you don't have to literally sit through and watch the whole 6 hours.
Yeah, cool.
Interesting. I think the horse mask couldn't make it any worse.
But is it the horse mask, like the one you see in all the memes and stuff?
Yeah. So there's one horse mask that I suspect is the one that they used for painted to be Jar Jar, and then they also reuse maybe even the same mask for Sebulba, and it comes out a few different times.
Nice.
Right, okay. Maybe you don't know what mask I'm talking about, which is a rubber mask that you see people wearing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a horse rubber face mask.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Jonathan, what's your watch list? Is this stuff you're going to watch or stuff you're going to...
This is the gonna watches because, so I did receive, after our most recent episode, received Tenet as a Christmas gift in the 4K version. So I'm going to sit down and watch that, I think, this weekend. That is on my to-watch list. And... Oh, yeah.
I gotta talk about the download codes now that you brought that up.
And the other one is the Doctor Who New Year's special. I know, Tim, you said you were already watching that tonight. I knew that our recording time was going to sort of overlap, so I just decided to PVR. And I didn't realize
it was after 90 minutes, so I started watching.
Yeah, I figured I'd go for the sort of all-in-one meal deal on that one. So just a couple of interesting ones. I know this Doctor Who special is supposed to be focusing on the Daleks and is supposed to be the sort of changing of the guard. They've already talked about that. We've talked about that on this episode, that there a couple of the companions are moving on. So yeah, I'm kind of keen to see how they tell that story. So a couple good ones there.
Cool. So I'll do my pick first, and then I'll go back into the download codes drama. So Deadpool 2. This is a quick little. I guess it was a clip that was made for Deadpool to promote it.
Yes. Yeah.
Where he knocks on David Beckham's door, and they just it's.
He still apologized for the first movie.
Yes, he apologized for his first movie. Yeah. And of course, I watched Deadpool 2, and he does resolve the Green Lantern in that one too, and says thank you, you're welcome, Canada. So here's so I know we talked about download codes in the past, right? And we talked about, like, I've never been a fan of Ultraviolet, and I owned, as I said, probably about, I want to say, a handful of films on Ultraviolet, right? All the complete Batman, Blade Runner 2049, which we talked about on this show in the past, was an Ultraviolet title. And my Gravity disc was a ultraviolet title as well, and I like that movie, and I would watch it again. But I have to walk across the room and get the Blu-ray disc out and put it in the player and watch it, and such a hassle.
Does anyone else hear violin music while he talks?
Yeah. So here's the story. So Ultraviolet was closing down, and we talked about this on the show, and they were moving their stuff over to Flixster Video, right? So I made sure I got my Flixster Video account set up, and I made sure I synced all my Ultraviolet stuff over, and I had it in my phone because that's the only place that Flixster Video existed in Canada anyway. Yeah, it was on our phones, right? Yeah. So I had that in my phone, and I had all my movies, and I had them all lined up and all ready to go. And then sometime last year, June, July 2019, whatever, Flixster Video decided to shut down.
It did. But Flixster Video also made the same kind of agreement with Google here in Canada.
Yeah. So here's my question to you. How the F do I get my content back? Because I contacted Warner Brothers and they said tough titties.
Well, I think there was a window. There was a window.
Yeah. Well, that window slammed shut pretty effing quick, in my opinion. Because I followed all the steps to make sure that I kept all my titles, and they're all gone now.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and I did have to go back and forth. I think between back and forth with the Flixster Google email chain, I think it probably took me at least a dozen messages back and forth. So
do I need to contact Google, or is it just too late?
I mean, you can always go down that path. There may have been a cutoff point. I mean, it depends on how diligent you're willing to be. But I mean, for me, there was some stuff that they migrated, some stuff they didn't, and then some stuff that they didn't have the rights for. And so we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. In the end, I got most of my stuff migrated, and I've been a little more, because obviously I have a pretty large Blu-ray collection. So I had probably about a good 30 different things, maybe more, 30 or 35. I fought back and forth with them about, this, that. And in the end, they couldn't give me a few of the things that I already had. So they basically gave me a choice of, any of these 50 different movies or TV shows you could basically have for free as an apology for not having the things that you had previously. So I ended up with a lot of that stuff transferred over. The unfortunate thing, and the part that I find kind of galling, is that Google Play, and I don't, want to start a fight with Google, but Google Play is not as good it's horrible streaming platform as Apple provides, in that the quality of the transfers aren't as good. There are far fewer high, Ultra HD, HDR, Atmos, all that stuff is not necessarily built in. It is for a few of them, but certainly not for all of them. So it's good, but I mean, I had some stuff on there, Lord of the Rings, and some decent stuff where I'm like, I feel like I kind of got a little bit jobbed, but then I feel like I kind of got jobbed in the first place because there was already that split between Ultraviolet and iTunes, and then later Flixster and iTunes, and now it's Google Play and iTunes.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I wanted to own the movies. I wanted to buy the discs, and in most cases I bought it for the disc to get the Blu-ray, right? And the fact that it came with a download code was not my motivator for buying, because if I had known, if deciding whether or not this is an Ultraviolet title and I was buying it for that purpose, I would not have bought the movie at all, because I've never been happy with Ultraviolet as a platform for watching videos. So
no, overall that whole experience has been frustrating, and it really does speak to a lot of things we've gone through over the years, right? It's the format wars. It's beta versus VHS. It's are we going to do Laserdiscs? Are we going to do Blu-rays? Or are we going to do DVDs? Are we going to do Blu-rays? Are we going to do HD DVDs? This one, again, it's all led by corporate vanity, and we'll align with this company, and we've got exclusives from this company. Like, MGM was one way and Warner Brothers was another way. So if you had, the one that really, really ticked me off was they did an animated adaptation of the classic comic book, The Dark Knight Returns. It's not great. Screw you, Warner Brothers. I don't like it. It's not good. But I bought the first one on Blu-ray Blu-ray, and it came with a download code. And they divided it into 2 parts. So they did the first one, and it came out, and the download was for iTunes. And then in between the releases of the first 2, they decided to switch providers, and the other one came out for the other service. I was like, you know what? Go jump in a freaking lake. That is ridiculous. So I had one on one service and one on the other service. And of course, now if you go to buy it, it all comes in one nifty package when you buy the digital package. And I'm like, that was particularly galling. But
so, okay, let's talk about some happy news then. And that is that a lot of these titles are available on Apple iTunes, right?
Yes.
So my question about these sales, because I mean, okay, so I already own Blade Runner, the director's cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have tons of copies of the original Blade Runner. I don't know if I really even want the original Blade Runner, but there you go. It's out there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without the redone soundtrack and all that kind of stuff. And it's being sold on Apple TV. Like Apple TV is saying that there's up to 30 to 50% off if you buy the titles this week, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So $14.99 is, you can buy 2049. What do you call it? Blade Runner 2049. If you can buy it for $14.99, or you can buy the 3 movies together for $14.99.
Yeah.
But I already own, and I already paid money for the Blade Runner director's cut, right? So it's kind of a wash. It's like, do I want 2049 as a digital copy? Maybe. I don't know. I bought it in 2017, it says here, according to this, right?
Yeah.
So how do I know, looking at the store, how do I know what is a good deal? Like I'm looking at the Batman series and the Batman Complete series, which I only watched like the first disc worth of. I think it's like $29 or something like that, right? Like, how do I know that's a good price? Like, because Apple doesn't say this is the regular price, this is what you're getting it for now.
No, of course they don't. So I will refer you, and this is for all of our audience, not just for our Canadian audience. So there is a website that I've been going to for a very long time, and it's simply Blu-ray.com. BLU-RAY.com. It's a very good resource for a couple of different reasons. If you go there, you can find, they will list by country. They have maybe a dozen countries on their homepage. Maybe there's more beyond that. But starting with, I think the first 3 are America, the UK, and Canada. And then you click on the thing and it tells you all the things that are on sale in your country, both at retailers or physical copies, and then you can also go in, you can look at all the digital providers. And in there, it'll also tell you what's on sale right now, and it'll tell you what percentage is off the regular price, and it'll tell you whether that's the lowest price it's ever been. So I use this all the time as a resource because, one, there's such a huge catalog, especially on iTunes, Google Play, places like that, even Amazon, when you're wanting to have a physical copy of something. It can be a real pain in the butt to sort through, what's on sale this week? Is that a good deal? So this is a really good resource that I go to all the time. So this is I'm not getting paid by Blu-ray.com, but there it is. So if you go to Blu-ray.com and you click on their deals section, then you can basically subdivide the deals into whatever format you're looking for. I go there usually, I think it's Tuesdays and Fridays is when they put up, basically when iTunes changes its deals. So if you go up on Tuesdays and Fridays, you go through, it'll tell you all the things that have just gone on sale and whether or not that's the lowest price, whether or not it's good price, and what you can basically calculate in your head. Okay, it's on sale for $7. It says it is, 40% off, and therefore the regular price is this. So I find that very helpful to figure out whether or not something is a good deal or not.
So this is selling Blu-rays, or this is referring to download codes as well? Like
both, yeah.
Like I'm not finding out how I find Apple. Like I'm on the deals section.
So if you go to the Canada section and you go to the deals section, or Jaime, you obviously
how do I know I'm in Canada? Okay, Canada. Blu-ray
so you get the little Canadian flag at the top, says Canada.
Okay, I see it there, yeah.
And then there, it basically gives you all the different stuff. It gives you 4Ks, it gives you Blu-rays, it gives you all the different services you can download things on. And then, one of the things on here is you can click on it. It shows you iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft Store, Fandango, Prime, Vudu, Walmart, Best Buy, Steam, and then all the different formats. And then from there, you can click on newest deals, lowest prices, and deals made day by day. So whatever they've uploaded each day. I find it to be very helpful when I can click on both lowest prices, because you can see sort of what's, is $5. Generally, nothing on iTunes for a movie goes below $5 Canadian. Mm-hmm. There have been a few exceptions. I somehow managed to snag Donnie Darko, which I don't know if you guys are fans of, but Donnie Darko was $3 one day. I was like, oh, cool. But $5 is about as low as a movie goes, and that includes 4K and whatever else. And sometimes they'll even put a TV season or a box set down as low as $5. And usually the price cumulatively for a box set of movies won't drop below $10. So sometimes you can get, like, I think they put the what was that name of that franchise? Divergent for this sale that's on right now. Divergent. You can get all 3 of the Divergent movies for $10. So again, $3.33 a movie is pretty good Canadian. So yeah, it's what, like $4,
like I'm looking at this
$4 American.
Batman movie that I was just talking about. The lowest price was $19 in September. It's currently $29.
Yeah,
and it was originally $90, right? Or normally it's $90.
And I bought it when it was $20 when they did that in September.
Batman one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Is like that's the other thing is like back in the day when we had discs, we could just, like, I don't know, do I buy Tenet and watch it, or do I wait till you're finished with it and borrow it? And
well, I mean, and that's the one thing that we sort of lost, and we talked about that in relation to obviously video games and stuff too. You lose something if you go to a purely digital model where you can't trade them in, you don't have an asset, right? You basically have something that's locked in unless you're willing to give or loan people your access codes, which obviously we're family, but I don't think there's some people you wouldn't want to be like, hey, you want to access all my stuff and mess with my iTunes account.
Well, so I have a buttload of iTunes credit, as you know, right? Because I don't know how to convert it into like Apple hardware, but look, I'm looking at like some of these things are like, this is a good site because my problem with the interface that Apple gives you is it's all categorized and you have to scroll through to find that one thing. Whereas here on this site, it's marked in red.
The other thing I do recommend is, and I do this with the Apple iTunes site as well, is again, you can put things on your wish list, right? So if you go in and you basically find something that you want, you click on it, and then if you click, there's a forward arrow, basically like a cloud button at the top. It's like a little arrow. If you click on that, it gives you the option to add it to your wish list. If you add it to your wish list, then basically anything from there you can reference your wish list. If you know what it is you want, or things that are you have maybe a physical copy of where you're like, I don't want to have to dig that out all the time, or I want to wait until, or I want to keep an eye on this and see if it ever goes down to a decent sale price so I can just add it to my digital collection. I added onto my wish list almost everything that I own a physical copy of, with a mind to the future of, it would be nice to be able to downgrade my physical copy collection. I don't think I would necessarily get rid of everything yet. I don't feel that comfortable with where we are technologically and everything else. Right. But I do feel like I could, in most circumstances, take it off my shelf, put it into a box and put it away for the time being, and then maybe decide in a few years if I feel comfortable I could get rid of DVDs, Blu-rays, whatever else. Right. So yeah, I've added everything into my watch list of stuff that I might potentially want to replace.
So that watch list is here somewhere on the site?
No, I'm talking about the watch list on iTunes.
Oh, wish list or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you go into iTunes on your phone or on your computer, and then you click on a movie or a television program that you want to watch, something where you're like, ugh, it's $100. I'm not spending $100. Right now, you can buy the complete Game of Thrones on iTunes is $200 Canadian. It's very expensive, but I've seen it as low, because I've been watching it this whole time, I've seen it as low as $60 for the entire set. Right. But I'm in the exact same boat that you are, Tim, where I already have the first 4 seasons. Yeah. So now I'm waiting for the seasons individually to go. So I know I had sent you a note saying, hey, by the way, Red Dwarf is on sale. Yeah, that was a series that you and I both really love. Earlier, maybe I think it was last year.
But you can't put a box set on your wish list. I'm looking at
You can. Yeah, you absolutely can. Oh, that's weird. I will say I've run into that glitch a few times, but it seems to be a glitch. Yeah, it seems to be a glitch. I've had that glitch happen to me, but generally I can put almost everything onto my watch list or wish list or whatever the hell they call it. But it's actually a pretty good way to sort of keep track of those things too. But yeah, so Red Dwarf was the one you and I had talked about. Red Dwarf, I had bought the first, I think, 6 seasons. They had them on for $5 a pop. So I spent $30 and I got the first like 6 seasons. Now they've got it for $50. You can get the first 12 seasons. And I'm thinking, well, what the hell do I do? Because I would like to get the rest of those seasons, but I don't want to have to buy that after already spending $30 on that. But right now, if I want to buy the seasons, they're still $15 a pop.
Yeah, there's no complete your set or whatever, right?
No. There's no like, they'll do that if you buy like episodes, but not if you buy previous seasons, which I think is a bit of a scam, but it is what it is. Obviously,
look at this. You can rent Face the Music for 99 cents. Bill and Ted, come on, you want to.
I'll be honest, I don't think I've seen either of the original 2 movies in their entirety.
Really? Yeah. I can't remember. I don't know if I've seen them all myself.
Yeah, bits and pieces. I've seen bits and pieces over the years at like people's houses and on TV and whatever. I've watched scenes, but I don't think I've seen the whole thing. But yeah, there's certainly, there are ways to sort of keep track of that. Again, I've been a little more actively doing this just because, as I say, I've been downgrading some of my physical collection because it was getting a little out of hand. So this was one of my ways of doing that. Was, I don't mind spending $5, especially because in some circumstances I'm upgrading from a DVD to a 4K Apple TV at my fingertips version, and for me that's a huge value, time and effort and quality. And if I wanted to replace it as a Blu-ray, it would be easily $20, and if I wanted to replace it on a 4K, it would be easily $30 Canadian. And so it's probably just as easy to spend the $5 and have it on iTunes. The only thing about iTunes, obviously, and any digital download, I will say, if anybody's still listening to this conversation, is what you are paying the money for is for the right to download it. That's very important for people to remember. You are paying for the right to download it when you purchase it. That does not guarantee that Apple will continue to have it in its inventory and that you will be able to download it in the future. So you have to decide if you want to guarantee that you will have access to something ad infinitum, you're prepared to download a file and keep it on your hard drive or an external drive or your server or whatever, because they could theoretically lose the rights to have it in the future. And they have done that. I've seen that happen to things that I own and things that other people I know have owned, that they've lost the rights to have things. In theory, down the road, and I don't know the details, I don't think many people at all would know the details of whatever their contracts are with places like Disney or, Amazon projects or whatever. Those places could have a termination date, or they could have a buyback date, or they could have an end date where they basically say, you know what, we don't want people to be able to buy Disney movies on iTunes anymore. We want them to just get Disney Plus. And so they might say, no more Marvel movies, no more Star Wars movies, no more Disney cartoons, no more Pixar cartoons, no more anything on iTunes. The only place you can get it is on Disney Plus. And if they decided to do that, you'd be up the creek, right?
Yeah.
Unless you downloaded them, in which case you own them, but you wouldn't be able to stream them, so you'd still need to get Disney Plus.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, well, this all started because I lost the rights to my movies, so...
Yeah, it's pretty rough as things are moving about, and it seems weird to say, but it would be better in the future when we only have like 3 places to get all this stuff, because then you won't have as much of a problem, whereas right now we're in the frothy part where everybody's trying to compete to be the service.
Yeah, and again, it seems like things are coming and going. Things that used to be on Netflix are now on Amazon, and things that are on Amazon's have gone back and reverted to Disney. And I think as a business model, it makes perfect sense. If you own the intellectual rights to something, make people come find you. But at the same time, they were also making a lot of money in the past by licensing those things. It's just that no one anticipated a future where there'd be so much competition. So it's a question of how long those contracts are for, right? Does Netflix have the rights to show certain movies for 50 years, 100 years, 4 years, 6 months? I don't know. Be curious. I should mention to you, Tim, as well, that the other thing I noticed that was on there, as long as you're shopping for deals, is every single season of Doctor Who is available for $10 right now.
That's an amazing price.
iTunes. $10 a season, and
that's an amazing price. That includes right up until $80 for season.
Yeah, that includes everything right up until the last season with Jodie Whittaker. So now that means you'd still be in for $120 or whatever if you wanted them all, and that doesn't include the Christmas specials. I should point that out. It doesn't always include the Christmas specials, which I think is a bit of a scam.
Can you believe I don't own a copy of Shaun of the Dead on digital?
You monster!
I know.
There's actually a box set. The Cornetto trilogy is actually in a set too.
Where is it?
I don't know. I bought it 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have all those discs, right?
Yeah, as do I. But all things in time.
Spell Coronet.
I know. I was just doing the same thing. How the hell do you spell Cornetto? Just search for Edgar Wright.
Yeah. Well, that was it. Yeah, I guess so. He's in the last Star Wars movie. Yeah, I was noticing there's a few people in it. Right? Out of Print. Ooh, is that a movie by him? Oh, it is a movie by him. Yeah, they got World's End, Hot Fuzz, and Shaun of the Dead on iTunes. Oh, wait, there's more.
And Baby Driver and...
Yeah, I have Scott Pilgrim was one that I had to argue to get back reinstated. I think that was... I contacted somebody and got a download code for that one. That was one I fought for years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would have fought for that one. I love that movie deeply.
Yes, it's great.
I mean, do you have a big digital collection? Have you gone down that road, or are you a streamer?
No, I stream stuff, and I've steadily reduced my my physical copy stuff. I just found myself sort of overwhelmed by what streaming has available, and said I'm honestly not going back to any of these. And most of the things I would end up watching are either on things that I services that I stream, or are like, oh well, is it a day that ends in day? Well, then Harry Potter and the Star Wars trilogies are all playing somewhere. So just watch those, and that's just the way that I watch things. I think before I probably started, wearing out the DVDs in my college years, and for whatever reason now I just haven't.
Yeah, I've definitely felt for the longest time and I am still an advocate of, if you love something, if you know you're going to watch it a bunch and you want a certain level of quality, or you really care about the sort of the commentaries, the behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff, then buying a good quality owned media makes a lot of sense to me. But I've been doing that a lot more selectively over the past couple of years than I was in the past. Before, I would be just like, oh, I got to get that. Of course, you got to have that. You got to get the new quality version of that, and blah, blah, blah. Now I tend to go a little more with, like, I think this year, grand total, I think I've bought 1-2 physical copies of anything. And the stuff that I tend to prioritize on the buying a digital copy tends to be stuff that is not available on a streaming service, or the quality copy on the streaming service isn't good. And the other thing is, I get into this argument with some of my friends all the time. The other thing to remember is, what's on a streaming service today does not mean it's going to be on a streaming service in the future. Something that is relatively popular now isn't necessarily going to exist in the future. I mean, I have a huge collection of animation because I'm a huge animation buff. You cannot get the original Transformers series on any digital service, and it's not on any streaming service here in Canada. The only way you can actually watch it is if you watch it on a DVD. So, when that changes, maybe I will change my perspective. But in the meantime, I need several shelves full of stuff that just doesn't exist anywhere. I actually went through my collection just after Christmas. I went through and sort of looked at things and was like, okay, well, is there anything I need to add to my wish list? And I looked, and I probably have 200 things, maybe 200 different things that aren't available on any streaming service and that aren't available for digital download. And until they are, I'm going to have to keep a shelf that has my stuff on it, because there's a lot of stuff there that I enjoy and I don't necessarily want to not have a copy of. And in some cases, some of it is quite rare and valuable because of those circumstances.
It doesn't show up, but it's the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy.
No, there you go. Yeah, I bought it because I think it was $15. I think I paid $15 for the 3 movies, and I was like, that's a steal.
Yeah, it's on disc in on Amazon, which I already own, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. So, hey, Jonathan, people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
And how many people want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevOfTheHair.
All right. Well, my name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA. On the Twitter machine is where you'll find me. And so until next time, we'll say bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Happy New Year and year.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter @Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
I added into the real-time follow-up there. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at that. That's where I knew it had tweaked somewhere that I'd seen it. Zack Snyder tweeted that out last week.
What's that?
That March. He was responding to someone's question about the JLA, his cut of JLA, and said like, "Oh, I hope you get rid of all the old ones." And he said, "Well, hopefully what you see in March will erase your bad feelings." So he was the one that put March into my brain because he tweeted it out last week.
Right.
Interesting. So now I just got to find something to fill up February so I don't have to do the unsubscribe, resubscribe dance.
Well, by the time you get through, so you already watched Watchmen. You got to catch up on Westworld still. What else you got on the to-do list?
Catching up on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Curb, yeah, absolutely.
We'll probably, as a couple, end up watching Succession.
Yeah.
And I got to look to see what other things. So, hopefully some like movies come out too that aren't available like on Amazon or Netflix or something.
Yeah.
We'll watch those on HBO.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Is your partner a fan of Sex and the City? I mean, there's lots of content. True Blood. There's
Veep. We might watch. I'm gonna see.
Oh, have you watched Veep?
We've not.
Oh my god!
It's always been kind of under the waterline of like, should we subscribe just for this? No, we won't. And then we watch.
Highly recommend Veep. It is some of the best dark comedy I've ever seen. It's so freaking funny, that show. Yeah, it's one of those ones. It's interesting too because the first, I think, 4 seasons are all into the same. The show's creator and showrunner is the same person, and then there's a new person that comes in for the last few seasons, and it kind of shifts tone a little bit, but it's just as funny but a little different. I think it's highly recommend that one for a watch. Yeah, there's so much content now between the different streaming services plus digital stuff plus the collection of things I've amassed over the years. It just feels like there's sort of no end in sight. As I say, especially knowing that we're like 2 weeks away from WandaVision dropping on Disney Plus. That's now required. We got to keep up with that, and it just feels like there's always something. I feel honestly the only one that feels a little extraneous that I could sort of drop off for a few months is Amazon, it just feels like there's so much out there. I'm really curious to see what they put on that Star thing that they're going to do, that Hulu International thing that they do in Disney Plus in February. I'm curious to see what they add there.
Is that going to be here too, or
it's only here? It's only here and in non-American markets. It's basically their version of doing not Hulu but Hulu,
right?
And it comes in as just part of your package for Disney Plus. But I'm curious to see what kind of content they put on there. We're going to finally get all the Aliens, Predator back catalog, the FX TV shows catalog with Fargo and Legion and Archer and all that stuff as well. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of stuff they could stick in there. I just don't know if they're going to package that all up on Disney Plus with this little thing.
Wow, do you know they made Leave It to Beaver a movie? Not starring the original cast.
No. I know they
Is
did
that from
Dennis the Menace.
era that was doing like Brady Bunch and other kind of stuff?
Yeah, around that time, I guess. Let's see who this is.
Well, they did a Bewitched movie, and they did a Dennis the Menace movie, and I think at one point they sort of recycled all those properties. Funny they didn't do an I Dream of Jeannie movie.
Yeah.
Something about owning a slave girl in a bottle. I don't know.
No, I used to undid the whole show. We were being so good.
What's really good that doesn't exist outside of owning a digital or physical copy is all the Justice League cartoon series, the Superman cartoon series, all that Bruce Timm, Haldini Bruce Timm stuff. You can get that on iTunes, which you can't. It's not streaming anywhere. Which maybe it is in the States. I bet you it is on what's it called? Is it HBO Max? Got that stuff, Jaime?
HBO Max got Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. I don't know if they got everything though. Like for all those other series you're talking about. Like I don't remember Superman being mentioned.
Does this site list box?
So I'd have to take a look.
Does it list box sets?
Yeah, I'm looking at. I'm on Best Deals.
Like physical
iTunes.
or
I'm on Best Deals iTunes.
Yeah, but again, it depends on like how far you have to go back.
iTunes bundles. Here it is.
Yeah.
Rambo. Yeah, the Rambo movies. Ooh.
It's a cool site just because originally their sort of milieu was just like they launched to do stuff that was obviously when Blu-ray was new. So I've been on it for like a decade plus, and they always had this sort of section of deals where the deals would take you to whatever your local Amazon or whatever would sort of give you all that, but they've sort of evolved it now so that it covers all these different bases, and I find it a really good resource. I usually I log in twice a week at least to check, usually Tuesday morning and Friday morning I check on to see sort of
So Friday,
whatever
so today
they
prices would have changed, or mind you, it's Apple shut down.
They didn't really change much today because it's New Year's Day and because of they've got this huge sale that's been on. It started like just before Christmas, so I think they're doing this up until probably Tuesday. It'll change. So all that stuff that's been on sale, all the box sets, all the movies, everything else have been on since then. But the Tuesday it'll probably shift over to the new stuff. But yeah, it's kind of cool because they have like the flags on it that tell you whether it's the lowest price. They tell you whether it's like, you know, the best price that it's ever been. They tell you what percentage has been off, so you can sort of figure out, like, if you're willing to sort of be patient too. Like, there was a few movies that I had put on my list, like Steve Martin's The Jerk, which is a comedy I always liked. Chris Farley and David Spade's Tommy Boy, just some old comedies and stuff like that I had put on my watch list. And they were always consistently in that like $14.99 Canadian to $12.99 Canadian. Sometimes they would drop as low as $7.99 or $8.99 Canadian. And I would look at them and I'd be like, yeah, I just don't feel like that's quite there. And sure enough, last week they all went on sale for $5. And I was like, you know what? $5 is my price point. It's their lowest point, so you know you're never going to see a better deal than that. And then you sort of decide, okay, you know, is this worth $5 to own a better, you know, a long-term version of this? Do I have the hard drive space? You know, and you know, some of this stuff, yeah, the deals are pretty sweet too, especially because unlike some other services, they're not charging any upgrade fees to 4K, HDR, any of that kind of stuff. So Apple isn't. So if you buy whether you buy a Blu-ray and you get it and you use the code that comes with the Blu-ray, or whether you download it from them, you're getting the 4K HDR version of a lot of these movies. And then as they upgrade those versions, they just upgrade them for free. So I now have a library of, you know, dozens and dozens of those 4K movies.
Have you downloaded
that I don't
them,
own.
or you just leave them on iTunes?
No, I have a dedicated external hard drive for my iTunes library, because I have I have a massive music library as well as a pretty substantial TV and movie library. And there's a bunch of stuff on there that is 4K that I don't own the 4K disc for. So it's in some circumstances and in many circumstances, it's the best quality copy that I could possibly watch. It's better than I would watch it on a streaming service. It's better than I would watch owning the DVD or the Blu-ray. So it's actually worked out quite well that way. All the Marvel stuff, I bought all the Marvel stuff on Blu-ray in the past because that was the best you could get it. Now they've upgraded all that stuff to 4K. I don't even need to watch my Blu-rays, and I get an even better version than I would have had before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win across the board.
So I looked up the series stuff, and Batman, the animated series, and Batman Beyond are indeed on there, and a few other things, but Superman, the animated series, is not. So
yeah, and no
rights
Justice League, none of that stuff.
Let me check for Justice League, because I saw some of the movies. Let me see. Justice League War, League vs. Teen Titans.
Oh, so they have some of those animated movies, but not the series necessarily.
I don't see the series. Their search isn't very smart. I don't think it's on here.
Yeah.
Or I'm just kind of looking through it. Yeah, no, I don't think they have the Justice League series, animated series.
Yeah, and some stuff, it just, you know, it's the totality of it, right? Like, even at $10 a pop, if you wanted to watch each season of Doctor Who, you're still spending $120 if you want to get all those for download, but they're not showing them anywhere else right now. Like, they took it all off Netflix. I don't know if it might be on Crave now here in Canada, but it wasn't for a long time. Doctor Who, I watched it when you recommended it to me. I started watching it on Netflix, and I watched the first like 7 seasons on Netflix. Yeah. It's not on Netflix Canada anymore. I think it might have ended up on Crave here in Canada, but some stuff, yeah, it's just, you know, South Park. Like, I think like, oh, it's kind of cool. You could, you know, get all the seasons of South Park on iTunes, but even at its best price, it's like $10 a season. It's been around they're on like season 25. Like, do I want to spend $250 if I want to watch all the South Park episodes? No. Yeah, no. So, yeah. But it's cool. I mean, some stuff, like, they've even got stuff like, you know, old, like, 1980s TV shows and stuff. Some stuff you want to catch up on. Like, I spent, I think it was like $20 and got, like, every episode of Cheers. Like, am I going to sit down and watch Cheers today? No. Am I going to watch in the future? Maybe. I'm like, it was $20 and it was like, you know, this is 1980s television. They did, like, 30 episodes a season. It's like it's 300 episodes for like $20.
Yeah.
Your cost per episode is like, literally pennies. It's crazy. Yeah. Again, I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people are just happy with whatever's, sit down at a streaming service and watch. There's some things, I don't know. Some things that I always feel like I kind of want, your favorite book, your favorite, it's like a teddy bear. You just want to, I want to know that I have a copy of, certain things at my fingertips where if, the internet went out tomorrow, I could just sit down and still watch.
Oh,
X
because you
movie
downloaded
or
them
whatever.
already. Yeah, that's true.
Or because I own the physical copy on a Blu-ray or DVD or, VHS cassette or whatever. Right? And we joke about it all the time, but like, look at what happened with Lucas, right? Lucas goes back and rewrites history on a bunch of his movies. And now you have to decide, like, you can watch on Disney Plus right now, you can watch all the Star Wars movies, but not in the way that they were originally presented. You can go back and watch, all kinds of different stuff where they've altered it or they've excised scenes or, in some cases you previously watched the director's cut, but on the one that's on the streaming services, the theatrical cut, right. Or, there's all these different circumstances too. At a certain point, some of these things are, a question of artistic integrity or as you prefer to see it or all that stuff too.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I saw Brightburn.
I haven't seen that. It's been on my to-do list for a long time.
I thought I could have sworn wasn't it on like one of the services for a while there?
I think it was on Netflix, I want to say.
I think I watched it. I can't remember. It's like...
That's the one about the little boy?
It's Superman, basically, but he's, he's not
like,
super.
Yeah, it's what if Superman was bad to the bone, yeah.
I've just scrolled through like 8 pages of movies.
Oh, and you could go on for quite a while. It's nice that you can search too, because they do best deals, newest deals, lowest prices, and deals by day, so you can really sort of see, what you're looking for. Pretty well-designed site, all things being equal.
Oh, it's basic, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be anything more than that. But it's the same thing if you go in and you look through the Amazon listings, it'll show you everything that Amazon has on sale each week. And if you wanted to own a physical copy of something, again, you can just sort of keep an eye on it and see if it's something new that's popped up or whatever. I've managed to snag some pretty good deals on sets and individual discs where they're just like clearing out the warehouse or whatever, and they're like, ugh, get rid of these, and like, great, I'll take them. One man's trash is another man's treasure, they say.